Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this What If story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by Angel Martinez 760226 on Wattpad. Now let's start. A high school stood as the premier institution for those aspiring to become heroes, a profession that had gained immense popularity since the first child with a quirk was born. The emergence of quirks transformed the world, leading to both remarkable advancements and significant challenges, including a rise in crime. However, this also ushered in the age of heroes, individuals who utilized their quirks to protect others and improve society. The Hero course was established to prepare future generations for the weighty responsibility of being a hero, quickly becoming the most sought-after program for aspiring students. In the midst of this transformation was Midoriya Izuku, a shy and introverted teenager who had once been quirkless. Now, he was the inheritor of the legendary hero All Might's quirk, One for All. Izuku's previous lack of a quirk had led to a lonely childhood, marked by bullying from his so-called friend, Bakugo Katsuki. Despite these hardships, Izuku nurtured a dream of becoming a hero who saved people with a smile, just like his idol. His journey began with acquiring a quirk, which he had achieved. Next, he needed to enroll in the prestigious Hero course that his mentor had attended, which he had also accomplished. Now, he faced the challenge of mastering his newfound power without injuring himself, a work in progress. Additionally, he needed to develop his social skills to be a worthy successor to the symbol of peace, another task he was diligently working on. Izuku was a kind-hearted boy with a strong will, and those who took the time to know him would see his true potential. Uraraka Ochako recognized this well. She was a cheerful girl with a warm and bright personality, and they had met at even taking the entrance exam together. Although she wouldn't admit it, she had developed feelings for him quickly, but now she found herself grappling with other thoughts. Ochako felt conflicted. She had been thinking about Izuku more than she should, and it was starting to feel normal to her. She questioned whether she was losing herself in these thoughts. Despite her worries, she couldn't help but admire him. Izuku was endearing, intelligent, and had a charm that made her heart race. The more she thought about him, the more her feelings intensified. She felt a strong longing to be closer to him, to be more than just friends, but she feared what might happen if she expressed her feelings. Late at night, while everyone else in the Heights Alliance dormitory slept, Ochako found herself wide awake. In the solitude of her room, she gazed at a picture of Izuku working out, a snapshot she had taken from an angle that suggested he hadn't noticed her. She had lost count of how many times she had thought about him in this way, but she was no longer concerned about it. To avoid any embarrassing situations with her roommates, she muffled her sounds with a pillow, knowing that the dorm system had its downsides. She made it a point to double-check the lock on her door, especially since she had once forgotten and nearly been caught. That night was different. Earlier in the day, they had participated in a rescue training exercise, and she had been one of the victims. The experience lingered in her mind as she reflected on her feelings for Izuku, knowing that she needed to sort through them soon. She was tied up above a fake pit, and the rope would be cut in just a few minutes. The hero had to defeat the villain, save her, or ideally do both. Midoriya executed his plan flawlessly, at least in her eyes. He faced Kirishima and Ida, a challenging duo, but Midoriya, being resourceful, devised a strategy to break through the barrier and rescue the hostage. In the end, he used Kirishima as an obstacle against Ida's relentless charge, resulting in a chaotic clash. With his full cowl activated, he saved Ochako at the last moment, catching her in a bridal-style midair just as the rope was severed, a true hero moment. While Midoriya's mind raced with panic about holding his crush like a bride, Uraraka's thoughts were filled with dreams of their future together. With that event fresh in her mind, Ochako eagerly anticipated midnight. She needed to relieve her tension, but the recent events made it feel different than usual. She had already succumbed to her desires multiple times and still felt restless. Was it truly heat she felt? Perhaps it was frustration. She was frustrated for many reasons, primarily because she lacked the courage to ask her crush out, not even for a casual outing. Additionally, she realized that mere pictures of Midoriya would not satisfy her longing. The closest she had was a photo where his arms were exposed, revealing a hint of his abs. Most importantly, she understood that her imagination and physical release had limits. The pleasure she once felt was fading, leaving her feeling ashamed for indulging in thoughts of Midoriya. Stuck in this CYC, she knew she needed to break free and reach new heights. But how could she feel closer to her dear Deku-kun? She considered trying some of the toys she had heard about, but the risk of leaving evidence in her room was too great. Then a thought struck her. The best way to feel closer to Deku-kun was to have a genuine connection. In her mind, she grappled with her feelings, overwhelmed by his beauty and purity. The idea of crossing a line felt wrong, yet the temptation was strong. She imagined what it would be like to have just a moment with him, to memorize every detail: his curly hair, his freckles, his bright eyes, and the strength she knew he possessed. But she quickly chastised herself for her thoughts, trying to regain control. Despite her internal struggle, she found herself on the balcony of her room, contemplating her next move. Looking up at the starry sky, she weighed the potential consequences of her actions for both herself and Midoriya. A gentle breeze brushed against her, heightening her awareness of her own feelings. She had made up her mind. Using her quirk to lighten her body, she jumped from her balcony and began climbing to the roof, moving as quietly as possible to reach the boy's side. She climbed from balcony to balcony, her cheeks puffed as she fought against the dizziness that came from using her power. The thrill of the moment pushed her onward. Finally, she reached her destination and released her quirk. Fortunately, the glass door was open, allowing her to slip inside easily. Once in the dark room, she laid her eyes on her dear Deku-kun, the moonlight casting a soft glow on his peaceful face. She didn't know how long she had been staring at him, but she shook her head to clear her mind. This was the moment of no return. Her thoughts began to wander, and all the restrictions she had set for herself faded away. Deku-kun was sleeping, and she felt a pang of guilt for even considering disturbing him. But when would she have such an opportunity again? What would he think of her? She hoped he would enjoy it, but she knew he was such a good person. Still, she wanted to see just how great he truly was. His sleeping form was captivating. She felt a mix of excitement and guilt, but she couldn't resist any longer. With determination, she reached for his blanket and swiftly pulled it away, revealing that he was only wearing boxers. Seizing the moment, she took a few discreet photos. Sitting at the end of the bed, she leaned closer, her heart racing as she carefully removed his boxers. As she admired her hard work, her breath quickened with excitement. Just as she hovered above him, she heard something that would change everything. 𝐼𝐼𝐻. Not here. They are looking. Hearing her name sent her into a state of bliss, making her feel as though she were floating in heaven, completely unaware of the context of his dream. That aside, 𝐼𝐻 became so infatuated that her mind focused on a single thought. If he were awake, Midoriya would see pink hearts in 𝐼𝐻's bright eyes and a kind of intense aura surrounding her. She was determined to make him feel amazing. With that motivation, she leaned closer to the sleepy boy, her heart racing. 𝐼𝐻 felt a rush of excitement as she realized the depth of her feelings for him. It was unusual, different, but wonderful in a way she could not describe. The more she thought about him, the stronger her longing grew. She was determined to show him just how much she cared. As she observed him, she noticed his body tensing, which she took as a sign that he was close to waking up. Perfect. This was her chance to express her feelings. She leaned in closer, her heart pounding, and felt a surge of determination. Sparks seemed to fly around Midoriya as he stirred, and she knew she had to act quickly. Suddenly, 𝐼𝐻's heart raced as she realized Midoriya was waking up. She quickly covered his mouth with her hand, trying to keep him quiet. The moment felt surreal, and she could hardly believe what was happening. Inside Midoriya's mind, confusion reigned. He was flustered, trying to process the situation, unsure if he was dreaming or if this was real. Deku-kun, 𝐼𝐻 whispered, trying to calm him down. He looked at her, bewildered, and she could see the panic in his eyes. But then she noticed something that made her heart sink. Tears were forming in the corners of her eyes. She felt vulnerable, and for a moment, everything else faded away. "Sorry, Deku-kun, I did something I shouldn't have," she admitted, her voice trembling. "What? Uraraka-san, what happened?" he asked, still trying to understand. "I couldn't contain myself. I needed to express how I felt so much that..." Her voice trailed off, and she took a deep breath. "What is it? What did you need to do?" He pressed gently. "I confessed my feelings for you," she finally said, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "I love you, Deku-kun. I really love you." Midoriya's heart raced at her words. "You really love me?" he asked, astonished. "Yes, I do. I love you so much that I couldn't hold back," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. In that moment, Midoriya felt a warmth spread through him. "Oh, I see. Well, I love you too, Uraraka," he stammered, his face turning bright red. Uraraka's heart soared at his confession. "You mean it?" she asked, her eyes wide with hope. "Yes. Since the first time I saw you, I knew I loved you. I just never had the courage to say it," he admitted, his own cheeks flushed. The two of them shared a moment of understanding, their hearts beating in sync as they realized the depth of their feelings for one another. Midoriya found himself unable to look at the girl above him, but when he finally did, he noticed tears in her eyes. He was about to launch into his usual apologies when a big smile broke across her face, followed by a deep, passionate kiss from his crush. Initially startled and confused, he soon surrendered to the kiss, closing his eyes and savoring the moment. He felt her soft hands caress his face and hair, and he let his hands explore her body as well. Under different circumstances, the fact that she was only wearing a long t-shirt might have concerned him, but at that moment, he was far more focused on kissing the girl of his dreams. Uraraka easily took his hands and guided one of them lower. When Midoriya felt a warm sensation, his mind snapped back to reality, and he broke the kiss, surprised. Uraraka urged him to enjoy the moment with her, and he felt compelled to give her pleasure, perhaps in gratitude for the affection she had shown him earlier. He continued to explore, captivated by the small sounds of bliss escaping her lips. The sight of her was mesmerizing, especially when she removed her shirt, revealing more of herself to him. She playfully asked if he could do something special for her, and though uncertain at first, he quickly learned how to make her feel good. He alternated his touches, enjoying the way she responded. Caught up in the moment, he nodded when she expressed her longing for more intimacy, and she positioned herself in front of him, her face filled with anticipation. When he complied, she felt an overwhelming rush of pleasure, struggling to contain her reactions. Her body trembled under his touch, and she was lost in the joy of the moment, feeling as if all her dreams were coming true. Midoriya, too, was experiencing a whirlwind of emotions. He had never seriously considered having a girlfriend before, focusing instead on his aspirations of becoming a hero. But when Uraraka confessed her feelings, he felt a surge of happiness. He had never understood the allure of such moments until now, and he was determined to make Uraraka feel as cherished as she made him feel. As they continued, Uraraka reached her peak, her body tensing as she held onto him tightly. A wave of bliss washed over her, and she finally relaxed, both of them breathless in the aftermath. Midoriya was captivated by the look of pure joy on Uraraka's face, a sight he knew he would remember forever. Once the moment passed, Uraraka gazed affectionately at him, her heart full. She nestled against him, resting her head on his chest and asking if he enjoyed their NTMT moments. He shyly admitted that he did, and she expressed her concerns about what had happened, fearing he might think poorly of her. He reassured her, emphasizing that he could never hate her and that she was not what she feared. With a newfound sense of connection, Uraraka asked if she could be his girlfriend, to which he eagerly agreed. They shared a light moment, discussing how to keep their relationship private for now, knowing their friends would make a fuss. With a playful kiss, she expressed her affection, and he returned the sentiment, feeling a warmth in his heart. As she playfully teased him, she left the bed to retrieve her shirt, heading toward the balcony to return to her room, leaving Midoriya with a smile on his face and a heart full of hope for their future together. Izuku got up and reached for something on his bed. He noticed that Ochako had left behind a piece of clothing. She playfully winked at him and jumped up, using her quirk to make herself lighter. Izuku was left alone with her pink striped panties, realizing that she must have been excited about their time together. Despite the urge to hold onto the memory, he decided to respect her privacy. After an eventful weekend, Midoriya Izuku felt like a new person. He had confessed his feelings to Uraraka Ochako, and she had agreed to be his girlfriend. They both decided to keep their relationship a secret from their classmates to avoid drawing too much attention. They planned to drop hints gradually before officially announcing their relationship. Monday morning arrived, and Midoriya woke up to the first day of his new life as a teen in a relationship. The thought of having a girlfriend brought a huge smile to his face. He jumped out of bed and quickly changed into his training clothes, eager to start his day with a morning run. After completing his laps at the running track, he took a quick shower and headed to the common room for breakfast. He chose cereal and sat at one of the tables, letting his thoughts drift to Uraraka. Lost in daydreams, he didn't notice his friends, Kirishima, Aoyama, and Ojiro, sitting beside him. Kirishima waved a hand in front of his face, bringing him back to reality. They exchanged greetings, and Kirishima commented on how early Izuku woke up. Aoyama, with his usual sparkle, asked what was on his mind. Midoriya quickly redirected the conversation, relieved to avoid revealing his secret. The group continued chatting about various topics until the rest of their classmates joined them. After breakfast, they headed to class, where Midoriya and Uraraka exchanged brief glances, their secret connection evident. Then came hero training, a standard rescue mission on ground beta. Midoriya teamed up with Shoji against Tokoyami and Sato, with Ida as the designated hostage. Everything was going smoothly until Midoriya passed by Uraraka, who playfully gave him a light slap on the back, startling him. As the week progressed, their normal classes and hero training continued, but Uraraka found ways to interact with Midoriya discreetly. She would touch him affectionately when no one was watching and steal quick kisses during training breaks. One time, she surprised him by pulling him into a secluded spot near the running track, catching him off guard. On Friday during lunchtime, before he could join his friends, Uraraka pulled him aside, claiming she needed help with something. Their classmates assumed it was just a crush, unaware of the deeper connection they shared. Uraraka led Midoriya to a secluded area behind the gym, surrounded by trees and bushes. There, she wasted no time in kissing him passionately, her hands exploring his shirt. Initially startled, Izuku soon melted into the kiss, his hands moving gently along her back. After a few moments, they broke apart, both gasping for air. Ochako leaned her head against his chest, holding on to him. Izuku commented on how it felt like she hadn't seen him all week. She playfully responded, teasing him about their time apart. As they continued to chat, Uraraka playfully suggested they should spend more time together, hinting at wanting to be closer. Izuku expressed concern about being seen, but she reassured him that she had checked the area and it was safe. They shared a moment of laughter and excitement, enjoying their secret connection. She was focused on her boyfriend, enjoying the moment as she playfully teased him. She paused briefly to express her excitement, mentioning how she had been looking forward to this all week. Despite his initial hesitation, he couldn't deny that she was surprisingly skilled, especially considering it was only her second time. He believed in her abilities. He found himself captivated by her enthusiasm, her movements fluid and confident, sending delightful shivers down his spine. The way she looked at him, her eyes sparkling with affection, seemed to silently ask if he was enjoying what she was doing, as if seeking his approval. Izuku admired her beauty, her cheerful and positive nature that brightened the atmosphere around them. He appreciated how she always made an effort to uplift those around her and how deeply she cared for her friends. He cherished her bright brown eyes, which shone with determination, and her soft brown hair that framed her face perfectly, framed her cute round cheeks. He loved how she looked in her hero suit, adorable and confident at the same time, the curves of her hips and thighs, the way she moved when she was running, and the newly discovered expressions she had whenever she was excited. It was really captivating. So much so that Izuku felt overwhelmed. Ochako urged him to embrace the moment, her enthusiasm infectious. She expressed her longing for a deeper connection, her eyes sparkling with hope and determination. He found it hard to resist her charm, especially in that moment. Caught up in her bright gaze, he felt a rush of emotions. After some slow gulps, she finally breathed and playfully stuck her tongue out while looking up at the green-haired teen. She expressed her satisfaction, indicating that she had finished. He felt a rush of excitement and admitted that it was quite 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 for him, suggesting it was now his turn. She quickly got up and planted a light kiss on his lips, reassuring him that she wanted him to enjoy the moment just as much as she did. She encouraged him not to feel pressured, noting that he always surprised her when he truly wanted to do something. Curious about what to do next, she offered to continue as long as he felt comfortable. She acknowledged that it might be a bit selfish on her part, but she hoped he wouldn't mind. He assured her that he didn't. She suggested that whenever he felt tense, he could call on her, implying that he wouldn't need to rely on himself anymore. With a playful laugh, she teased him about his innocence, surprised by the things he had shared with her. He explained that when he was close to a certain moment, he instinctively activated his quirk, which enhanced his abilities. She noted how his quirk seemed to boost him in various ways, prompting him to think about how One for All manifested differently for him compared to All Might. Suddenly, he caught himself before saying something that could reveal too much, realizing how absurd the situation was. He felt a mix of embarrassment and concern about exposing his secret to her in such a light-hearted context. Used to the mumbling, but that sudden burst was new to her. Anyway, he said it was nothing, so to her it was nothing. After that, they left for the lunchroom to grab food. Midoriya had to insist since Ochako kept joking that she was already satisfied. This became a routine for them. They met after midnight and on Sundays too. They spent time together early on Monday mornings, in the classroom while cleaning, in their secret spot behind the bushes on the running track, in a blind spot on ground gamma during rescue training, and even in the Heights Alliance showers, one of their boldest moves. The following week felt like a warm breeze, driven by 𝗟𝗏𝐼's seemingly endless enthusiasm and need. Sometimes, Midoriya worried that he might eventually feel overwhelmed, even though he knew it was biologically impossible. Yet, every time 𝗟𝗏𝐼 invited him out for their secret dates, he felt a twinge of guilt, as he was the only one being pleased, and that feeling grew stronger as time passed. As the week came to an end again, the brunette led him to their hideout. Would Fridays always be so eventful? She didn't need to say anything, just a look or a gentle nudge was enough for him to understand. Once behind the gym, she wasted no time and playfully pulled down Midoriya's breathes. He felt a rush of excitement, anticipating what would happen next. She teased him, and he couldn't help but respond to her playful nature. Now that he had more experience, Izuku could tell that Ochako was improving with each encounter. He noticed that he seemed to have gained some endurance, as it was taking him longer to reach his limit. This thought worried him slightly, as he feared there might come a time when he wouldn't be able to let go. Yet, Ochako never ceased to surprise him. Though he would never admit it aloud, she had a certain talent for what they were doing. Today, she seemed particularly focused, moving with a newfound confidence. As he watched her, he was struck by how determined she appeared. She was fully engaged, and it was clear that she was eager to please him. He felt a rush of warmth at her enthusiasm. She seemed to know just how to push his buttons, and he admired her for it. Izuku felt the energy of One for All building up inside him as he got closer to his limit. He instinctively held her head gently, guiding her movements as she adjusted to his rhythm. The sounds of his low breaths filled the air, and he could sense her excitement. She was clearly enjoying the moment, and he felt a swell of affection for her. As he reached his peak, he was momentarily lost in the experience, feeling a wave of bliss wash over him. He held her close, feeling a deep connection. When he finally came back to reality, he realized he had gotten a bit carried away and apologized, feeling slightly embarrassed. Ochako reassured him, saying it was okay and that it meant he enjoyed it. She stood up to change her underwear, which had become soaked, but Izuku stopped her, looking deeply into her eyes. Concerned, she asked if everything was all right, and he admitted that it wasn't entirely. He leaned in to kiss her, exploring her mouth tenderly. As he kissed her neck, she felt a mix of confusion and excitement at his sudden shift in affection. He carefully removed her jacket and unbuttoned her shirt, taking his time to savor the moment. She ran her fingers through his green hair, feeling waves of pleasure course through her. Izuku's hands moved lower, and he paused for a moment, taking in the sight of her pink striped underwear. He felt a surge of longing but resisted the urge to rush. Ochako, sensing his hesitation, encouraged him, though she was flustered. He gently slid his fingers beneath her underwear, eliciting a shiver from her. He expressed his longing to make her feel good, and she blushed at his kindness. As he continued, she felt herself becoming overwhelmed with pleasure, her breath quickening. Izuku guided her to lie back on the grass, anticipation evident on her face. He leaned down, teasing her with gentle touches, and she responded eagerly. The connection between them deepened, and he marveled at the joy he felt in sharing this moment with her. As they continued, Ochako's reactions were filled with genuine excitement, and Izuku found himself captivated by her honesty. He realized that this side of her was just as appealing as the one he had always known. In the end, they both felt a sense of fulfillment, their bond growing stronger as they navigated the depths of their emotions together. Izuku looked up at her, ensuring she was all right, feeling grateful for the experience they had shared. Well, it would depend on the proper definition of fine. She had a kind of silly smile across her mouth, slightly agape, looking up at the sky, apparently spacing out, and there were the pink hearts too. Ochako was laughing softly and spaced out, as if her mind was blank. Then, out of nowhere, her eyes focused again, and she sat up in an instant, holding Midoriya by his arms and giving him a quick kiss. The sudden move caught him completely off guard. As fast as she had approached him, she let go of his face, her excitement evident. She exclaimed that it was awesome. Midoriya, now flustered, scratched the back of his head nervously. He admitted that he had done some research and learned something. When she asked if that meant he had watched adult content, he felt an invisible arrow cross his chest. He explained that he thought it would help him understand what to do, as he had never done anything like that before, and apologized for it. Ochako reassured him, expressing happiness that he had taken the initiative to learn because he cared about how she would feel. She found it lovely. Midoriya was surprised by her response, and she confirmed that she was indeed happy. He hesitated, asking if she minded that he had seen another girl. She quickly dismissed his concern, saying that even if he had, it wasn't like the girl was really there. She shared that she had watched some videos too, and even found some comics. Midoriya was taken aback, asking how long she had been paying attention to him. She hesitated but eventually revealed that after his fight with 𝗟𝗏𝗏, she had started to notice him more, especially how he looked when he worked out. Midoriya asked if she had gone through a stalker phase, and she admitted that she had. She explained her insecurities, mentioning her height and other physical attributes. Midoriya, with his eyes closed as if deep in thought, gently held her shoulders and told her that she was perfect. He confessed that he didn't care much about her looks when he first fell for her and that he found her very attractive. As Midoriya spiraled into anxiety over his confession, Ochako let his words sink in. She realized that he valued her for who she was inside. She playfully teased him about being a bad boy for saying such things, which made him blush. She remarked that he could get any girl if he wanted, but he insisted he didn't need to. Ochako playfully wrapped her arms around his neck, and they were still far from the main building, with no one around to see them. She acknowledged that one day he might get enough of her, which is why she wanted to make the most of every moment they had together. Midoriya hugged her closer, his heart racing as he declared his love for her, saying he was hers to keep. Ochako playfully responded, asking if she could take that as a wedding proposal. Midoriya stumbled over his words, realizing it was early for such thoughts, but offered to get a part-time job until they graduated. She laughed lightly, finding him adorable when he got nervous, and assured him there was no need to rush things. She thanked him for always being there for her. As they walked together in silence, their heads leaned against each other, smiles on their lips, One could say Midoriya and Ochako were just another pair enjoying each other's warmth and sharing dreams for the future. However, 𝐼𝐼𝐬 knew better. She had witnessed Midoriya's enthusiasm for 𝗟𝗏, and the gravity girl couldn't help but feel the weight of it all. She saw it. Not all of it was visible to her, but she clearly saw Midoriya without his trousers and underwear, invading 𝗟𝗏's personal space. Filled with shame, fear, and confusion, she hid behind the corner. What if they saw her? No, the real concern was if he noticed her. 𝗟𝗏 needed help, but 𝐼𝐼𝐬 wasn't sure if she could intervene, knowing Midoriya and his powerful quirk. She dared to look again, slowly peeking around the edge, completely oblivious to her invisibility. The next sight made her heart race, Midoriya with his face close to 𝗟𝗏, which instantly made her react by covering herself protectively. Though they were a bit far, she could hear the sounds 𝗟𝗏 was making, and her heart ached for the poor girl. She couldn't even imagine what 𝗟𝗏 was experiencing to scream like that, which only deepened her guilt. She had heard of such things before. What was it called again? When someone, well, engages in that kind of act. The name danced in her mind, but she quickly brushed it away, feeling her cheeks heat up. If someone with infrared vision passed by, they would see that it wasn't just her face that was flushed. When 𝗟𝗏's scream pierced the air and then fell silent, panic surged through her, and she ran away as fast as she could, hiding in the first spot she found. What if he found her and decided she was next? She didn't want to know what had happened back there, and she hoped 𝗟𝗏 would forgive her for not finding out. Getting behind a large tree, she took a full 5 minutes to catch her breath and calm her racing heart. The sight of Midoriya, the boy everyone deemed harmless except for villains, was doing something so shocking. That had to be a crime, right? Was he turning into a villain? What if he had been bad all along? Could he be responsible for all the attacks they had faced before? No, she told herself to stay calm. Midoriya wouldn't fight so fiercely and break his bones if he were truly a villain. Or would he? No, he wasn't secretly a villain. But what he had done? Why had he done it? Did he really like 𝗟𝗏? Could it be that he liked her too much? This was bad. She thought 𝗟𝗏 liked him too, but what if she didn't? Oh no, did this mean she would never get married? 𝐼𝐼𝐬's thoughts were interrupted by familiar voices. She peeked around the tree and saw Midoriya and 𝗟𝗏 walking together, hugging each other. Her first thought was that maybe Midoriya would pressure her into saying she was his girlfriend. He could easily do it with all his strength. Being the good friend she was, 𝐼𝐼𝐬 decided to help 𝗟𝗏 out of this huge problem and knock some sense into that green-haired head. He was still a friend after all. So, she moved from her hiding spot, taking a different route to the main building in 𝗟𝗏 to find her friends. She sensed she would need help. Unfortunately, lunch was over, and she had to return to the classroom. There, she struggled to focus on whatever Aizawa was discussing, her eyes darting from 𝗟𝗏 to Midoriya, then to the clock, and back to 𝗟𝗏. One advantage of being invisible was that when she wasn't paying attention to something specific, no one noticed. But after all his time teaching class 1A, Aizawa had 𝗟𝗏 the ability to detect deviations in attention, like a sixth sense. And the solution comes in this way. 𝐼𝐼𝐬. She was caught off guard. 𝐼𝐼𝐬. She finally responded, "Oh, here." The answer. 13. Aizawa raised an eyebrow. Well, I doubt that the first emperor of the Tokugawa won his first battle at that age. I suggest you read that section of the book again and summarize it in at least 2 pages. Okay, she mumbled, lowering her head unnoticed. And try to pay attention in class. Okay. Now they noticed because her head was resting on the desk. After that, hero training began, and on the way to change into their training clothes, Midoriya approached 𝐼𝐼𝐬. 𝐼𝐼𝐬-san, if you want, I can help you with those lessons, she was startled. Don't worry, I can handle it. Really? I don't mind, but I do. I mean, I feel like I have to do it myself. Besides, I'm sure you're busy with your training. Yeah. Well, that is true, but I could skip one day too. Oh, please don't. I'd hate to get in your way. I should go bye. And just like that, she dashed to the girls' locker room, leaving a confused and embarrassed Midoriya behind. Did I say something wrong? Don't worry, 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐿. I'm sure she means it when she says she needs to do it herself. As heroes in training, we all should do our best to overcome our difficulties. Iida said proudly, comforting his shorter friend with a hand on his shoulder. I guess so. By the work of destiny, hero training turned into a game of tag, but in pairs, one tied to another. The objective was to steal the headband of the opposing team, similar to a chivalry battle. Of course, 𝐒𝐮𝐽 ended up facing Midoriya. Why not? Her partner was Kirishima, who was as hyped as usual. They were up against Midoriya and Koda, not a particularly strong combination, but still, she had to face Midoriya. The result, which surprised practically everyone except for Bakugo, who kept swearing, and Uraraka, who insisted Midoriya would win, was a victory for Koda and Midoriya. It all ended with one decisive move after much strategizing. Knowing that Kirishima wouldn't leave any openings and that Koda wasn't exactly the most outgoing person, Midoriya formed a plan and convinced Koda to help. Using his quirk, the shy boy summoned a group of crows, which swarmed around the hardened quirk user and the invisible girl, distracting them. With that opening, Midoriya activated full cowl and launched himself at their target. Being the stubborn guy he was, Kirishima held Midoriya in place, managing to keep both him and Koda away from 𝐒𝐻𝐽, who had the headband. The invisible girl panicked when Midoriya tried to reach for it while Kirishima held him down. She rolled over Kirishima's back and entered Koda's range, who easily stole the headband, much to his and 𝐒𝐻𝐽's relief. After the match, everyone gathered around Koda, leaving him a bundle of nerves while Kirishima grumbled to himself about the loss not being significant. Meanwhile, 𝐒𝐻𝐽 distanced herself from the quirk inheritor. Once class was over and everyone had finished showering, the invisible girl dashed from her room to Yaoyorozu's, where the other girls were forming a study group. 𝐒𝐻𝐽 burst through the door, closing it quickly behind her and startling her friends, but the bigger shock was yet to come. 𝐒𝐻𝐽 exclaimed that Midoriya had been in a compromising position with Uraraka. Although Todoroki was nowhere near them, the room fell silent. It took 𝐒𝐻𝐽 a moment to realize that Uraraka was also part of the group, so perhaps that wasn't the best way to share the news. Fortunately, she didn't see the brunette there, so she felt safe. As for the others, they reacted with disbelief. Jiro was the first to express her concern, urging 𝐒𝐻𝐽 to refrain from spreading such gossip. Yaoyorozu, still processing the shocking information, took on a more mature demeanor. Ishido, on the other hand, was intrigued and wanted to know where 𝐒𝐻𝐽 had heard that. 𝐒𝐻𝐽 insisted she had witnessed it with her own eyes, which made her friends shudder at the thought. Tsuyu expressed skepticism, doubting that Midoriya would engage in such behavior. Jiro echoed her sentiment, noting that the two had been growing closer since the beginning of the year, but they hadn't shown any signs of being that NTMT before graduation. Despite their agreement, a blush crept onto everyone's faces at the mere suggestion. Mina, feeling uncomfortable, asked for clarification on what 𝐒𝐻𝐽 meant by between her legs. 𝐒𝐻𝐽 explained in a loud voice, and the others were taken aback. They quickly dismissed the mental image, but curiosity lingered. Mina pressed for details, and 𝐒𝐻𝐽 recounted how she had followed the pair out of curiosity, only to stumble upon a scene that left her speechless. Jiro interrupted, asking 𝐒𝐻𝐽 to stop sharing too many details. Yaoyorozu warned her that this could lead to trouble if the story spread to the teachers or the individuals involved. 𝐒𝐻𝐽 insisted she had seen what she claimed, but the others remained skeptical. They decided to keep an eye on Midoriya and Uraraka, just to be safe. The weekend passed with the girls observing the potential couple from a distance, trying to gather information without raising suspicion. To their relief, the two seemed to be acting normally. However, as the following week unfolded, the girls began to notice subtle signs of closeness between Midoriya and Uraraka, shared glances in class, small exchanges of food, and supportive cheers during hero training. Their smiles were constant, and if it weren't for the initial incident, the girls would have been thrilled to see the two finally acknowledging their feelings. By the end of the week, the girls reconvened in Yaoyorozu's room. After finishing their homework, they discussed the couple and what 𝐒𝐻𝐽 had supposedly witnessed. They concluded that Midoriya and Uraraka were indeed getting closer, but not in an inappropriate manner. The girls encouraged 𝐒𝐬𝐽 to let go of her initial claim, reminding her that they had found no evidence to support it. Yet, 𝐒𝐬𝐽 remained adamant, feeling frustrated that her friends hadn't seen what she had. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 felt a lingering mark in the back of her mind, as if it had been scorched there. She suggested that if it was the effect of a quirk, they could find the user and ask them to undo it. Her friend agreed, mentioning that Midoriya could help. However, 𝐒𝐬𝐽 quickly dismissed the idea, feeling anxious. She sighed, her exhaustion evident from the lack of quality sleep over the past week. The group decided it was time to get ready for bed, especially with a special class scheduled for the next day. One of her friends complained about the Saturday class, but another reminded them it would be hero training. With that, they all went to their rooms, but 𝐒𝐬𝐽 found herself unable to sleep. She felt a sadness that her friends didn't believe her, and she wished it were just a trick of her mind. As she pondered her thoughts, she wondered about 𝗟𝗏𝐼's feelings on the matter. Although she had heard that some women were interested in such things, she didn't want to find out for herself. She shook her head, realizing she needed some fresh air to clear her mind. Stepping out onto the balcony, she leaned against the short wall, letting the cool breeze brush through her hair. The night sky was clear, filled with stars, and the full moon cast a bluish glow. Lost in thought, she gazed upward until something caught her eye, a figure climbing the wall of the building, moving swiftly from the 4th floor to the 5th. She squinted, trying to identify the person, and then it struck her. That was Ochako room. Panic set in as she considered the implications. Was Ochako confronting someone? What if she was in trouble? Without wasting another moment, 𝐒𝐬𝐽 rushed to wake her friends, urging them to follow her. They gathered in front of 𝗟𝗏𝐼's room, where 𝐒𝐬𝐽 explained her suspicions. The girls exchanged worried glances, and one of them suggested it could be a villain attack. They decided to check on 𝗟𝗏𝐼, moving cautiously to the boys' side of the dorm. As they approached Midoriya's room, they hesitated, whispering about what they might say if he woke up. One of the girls suggested they could say they saw something suspicious outside. Finally, they decided to enter the room quietly. Yaoyorozu took the lead, using her skills to unlock the door. Once inside, they adjusted to the dim light, and then they saw something that left them in shock. The sight before them was unexpected and left them momentarily frozen. 𝐒𝐬𝐽 and her friends struggled to process what they were witnessing. It was a scene that would be etched in their memories for a long time. Yaoyorozu was the first to regain her composure, demanding an explanation from Midoriya, who stammered in response. 𝗟𝗏𝐼 quickly tried to defend herself, but the situation was chaotic. The girls were overwhelmed, caught between shock and disbelief as they tried to make sense of what had just unfolded. Ribbit, Midoriya, what have you done? Toru had seen them, but what exactly had she witnessed? Did she know they were together, or had she merely spotted them sharing a moment behind the bushes? With Mina also present, the news would spread quickly. They hoped it wouldn't, but the tension was palpable. Midoriya felt a chill run down his spine as Kyoka's serious demeanor sent shivers through him. He instinctively backed against the wall, revealing more than he intended in the moonlight. The group froze, a mix of embarrassment and shock on their faces as they processed the unexpected sight. Realizing his mistake, Midoriya quickly covered himself, his face flushed with humiliation. Seizing the moment, 𝗟𝗏𝐼 jumped from the bed and positioned herself protectively between the angry girls and Midoriya, arms outstretched. "Wait, don't get near him," she exclaimed. Kyoka dismissed her with a scoff. "Ochako, you don't need to defend him. We can handle this." "No, you don't understand. Deku-kun did nothing wrong." 𝗟𝗏𝐼 insisted. "Are you out of your mind? He got you in his room." Kyoka shot back. "Well, yes, but Ishido, enough. No matter what he said, you don't have to do what he wants. Now, Midoriya, come here so I can tie you up and throw you in the nearest river." Yaoyorozu's anger was evident. "Hey, I can use my acid, he won't die, right?" Ishido added, her voice rising. "Everyone stop." The command rang out, startling the girls. 𝗟𝗏𝐼 lowered her voice again. "Are you even listening to yourselves? How can you think about hurting Deku-kun? Ochako, if he pressured you into this..." "He didn't, Ishido," 𝗟𝗏𝐼 replied firmly. What? 𝐼𝐮𝐲 was taken aback. 𝗟𝗏𝐼 took a deep breath. I'm here because I want to be. I was doing what I wanted to do. The honesty in her words caught the girls off guard. This wasn't typical behavior for 𝗟𝗏𝐼, and they began to worry. Perhaps Midoriya had some hidden ability or had coerced her in some way. They couldn't believe she would willingly choose this. Concern replaced their anger for 𝗟𝗏𝐼. They felt she must have been manipulated or threatened. Prioritizing her well-being over their quest for justice, Yaoyorozu placed a comforting hand on 𝗟𝗏𝐼's shoulder, leaving her confused. Don't worry, we'll figure this out, she reassured. Huh? 𝐼𝐮𝐲 chimed in next. We won't tell anyone. Promise. With that, they began to usher 𝗟𝗏𝐼 out of the room, despite her protests. No, wait. You don't understand. But she was already outside. The 5 girls paused at the door, casting a fierce glare at Midoriya, who felt as if he were facing a storm. Once they left and closed the door, he was left alone with a whirlwind of thoughts and a deep sense of fear for what might come next. In Yaoyorozu's room, the girls surrounded 𝗟𝗏𝐼, bombarding her with questions about what had happened and what Midoriya had done to lead her there. With each inquiry, 𝗟𝗏𝐼 grew increasingly frustrated. As I said before, I went there on my own. There's no point in hiding it now. He's not here, and we won't judge you, Yaoyorozu insisted. For the 11th time, I wanted to do it. 𝗟𝗏𝐼 exclaimed. Do you remember what happened last week? 𝐼𝐮𝐲 pressed. Yes, perfectly. No one brainwashed me. Whoever did it did a good job, 𝐼𝐮𝐲 muttered. Oh, for the love of, can I go now? 𝗟𝗶𝗸, I don't think you should be alone. He could come to you while you sleep, another girl warned. Well, that would be a surprise, but Deku-kun isn't that forward, at least not yet. How many times? We kissed. I don't know, 20, 30 maybe? Shock spread across the girls' faces. That much? Yeah, maybe. Oh, right, you said you saw us before. When was it? Well, last Friday behind one of the gyms. Oh no. I knew I should have looked around. Well, I can't cry over spilled milk. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some unfinished business with. Kyoka grabbed her wrist, concern etched on her face. 𝗟𝗏𝐼, you don't need to go back. 𝗟𝗏𝐼 managed a smile, though annoyance flickered beneath. I know. He can't harm you. He won't. Yaoyorozu gently pulled her back down, her expression serious. 𝗟𝗏𝐼, I know you have feelings for Midoriya, but we need to tell the teachers. Who knows, he might even avoid expulsion. Are you still implying that he abused me? Ochako, there's no shame in admitting it. There is when it's not true. We all know Deku-kun wouldn't harm me. Can you stop that? Stop what, Kyoka? Stop calling him that. You don't consider him your friend after this, right? Of course not. We're much more than friends. It's been a week since he became my boyfriend. You're what? 𝗟𝗶𝗸, I have to agree with Mina. This is a bad idea. I'll say it one more time. I was with Deku-kun because I wanted to. He didn't force me or harm me. Ochako, stop being so stubborn. Me? Stubborn? Then tell me, Yaoyorozu, who's still talking nonsense about what they don't know. Silence fell over the group. As wrong as it seemed, 𝗟𝗏𝐼 had gone there of her own volition, but they were still in denial. Midoriya must have done something to her. I thought you girls would be happy that Deku-kun and I got together. She realized she had been mistaken as she left the room, her footsteps echoing in the hallway. Midoriya felt a pang of concern for her, but he understood her frustration. Alone in her room, she fell onto her bed, burying her face in her pillow. It was a rare moment when she felt overwhelmed, and she hoped Midoriya would understand. Saturday morning arrived, and Midoriya found himself unable to sleep, haunted by the fear of being discovered with 𝗟𝗏𝐼 and the weight of unfinished business. To shake off his fatigue before the special class, he took a cold shower. After grabbing a quick breakfast, he hurried to ground beta, where the class would take place. Lost in thought, he pondered the implications of his relationship with 𝗟𝗏𝐼, the expressions of surprise from his classmates still vivid in his mind. Leaning against the gate, he dozed off, unaware of when his classmates arrived. Most were surprised to see him up so early, attributing it to his usual habits, while the girls wondered how he could even rest after everything that had happened. Soon, Izuku-sensei appeared, wrapped in his sleeping bag, dark circles under his eyes. He mentioned the overwhelming amount of homework he had to review but quickly shifted focus to the day's objective, enhancing teamwork in unusual and challenging situations, along with planning and reacting to sudden events. With that, he rolled away, leaving the responsible teacher to continue the class. All Might then stepped in, greeted by cheers from the students. Transforming from his muscular form to his more fragile appearance, he brought a sense of humor to the situation. Adjustments had been made to his uniform, ensuring it fit even in his smaller form. Despite everything, All Might remained the symbol of peace. He addressed the students, noting the rarity of Saturday classes but emphasizing the importance of their training. The day's activity would be a game of capture the flag, with unique rules. The students were excited, eager to participate. All Might explained that they would be divided into 2 teams of 5, chosen at random, to simulate real-life situations where they had to collaborate with whoever was present. The objective was to capture the enemy's flag and return it to their base, with the freedom to hide the flag wherever they chose. As he continued, he reminded them of the additional rules. The match would end if the enemy carried their flag to their base, but they could attempt to retrieve it while the other team was in motion. A time limit of 15 minutes was set, and the winning team would be the one to hold the enemy's flag, even outside their base. He introduced a twist: 6 villains would be scattered throughout the area, their only goal to disrupt both teams. The students listened intently, understanding the seriousness of the lesson. All Might's presence inspired them to rise to the occasion, embodying the ideals of heroism. The teams were sorted, with Midoriya joining Yaoyorozu Momo, Hagakure Toru, 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐸, and Shoji Mizo, while the opposing team included Kaminari Denki, Kirishima Ijiro, Azui Tsu, Ashido Mina, and Sato Rikido. The villains for this round would be Todoroki Shoto, Ojiro Mashireo, Mineta Minoru, Jiro Kyoka, Aoyama Yuga, and Bakugo Katsuki. As the teams entered ground beta, the villains dispersed. The remaining students and All Might moved to the monitoring room. With the signal given, the game began, and both teams sprang into action. Midoriya quickly devised a plan for his team. He decided to leave Hagakure and Shoji at their base, knowing Shoji's ability to detect enemies would be invaluable, while Hagakure's stealth would enhance their defense. He and 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐸 would take the lead, utilizing their speed and agility. Yaoyorozu would serve as the strategist, using her skills to find the enemy base and retrieve their flag. He considered the opposing team and their strengths. Sato and Kirishima were likely to take an offensive approach, while Ashido and Tsuyu could cover a lot of ground. Midoriya anticipated they might split into 2 groups, combining strength and agility, but he suspected they would charge in together, relying on Kaminari's quirk for defense. The presence of the villains added an unpredictable element, but he chose to focus on his immediate strategy for now. The Greenette shared his thoughts with the team, and his teammates mostly agreed with him. However, he expected Yaoyorozu to add some details or at least comment on their strategy, but she seemed determined to ignore him. Hagakure kept her distance while they were inside the building they chose to hide the flag. 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐸 and Midoriya moved across the city using the rooftops to gain a better view of the area and possibly draw some attention to themselves. They were doing well, and the plan seemed to be working, perhaps too well. Suddenly, a sparkling beam of light shot through the air and severed 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐸's tape while he was midair, causing him to tumble and roll on the rooftop. Midoriya witnessed this and immediately jumped back to help his partner, narrowly avoiding a large explosion with a swift flip in the air. He rushed to 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐸, helped him up, and they quickly took cover under a water tank. They then heard footsteps and a familiar voice. Bakugo made it clear that Midoriya would not get past him. Small explosions formed in his hand, and his face wore a menacing grin. 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐸 felt the weight of the situation, realizing they were facing Bakugo right from the start. He was about to jump out of their hiding spot, but Midoriya held him back, warning him that Aoyama was watching from the nearby buildings and would cut their tapes before they could escape. Midoriya promised to think of something. Once Team B found a good place to hide the flag, they set out to pursue the enemy flag while Kaminari stood guard, just as Midoriya had predicted. Having Todoroki and Bakugo as opponents was a significant concern, enough to discourage anyone from going alone. It might take a bit longer, but they could navigate obstacles more effectively with a single, powerful offensive aimed straight for the objective. Kirishima wisely noted that Midoriya would have anticipated this and suggested they finish it quickly. The team agreed, especially Mina and Tsuyu, who had their reasons for wanting to avoid a confrontation with Midoriya at that moment. As the horn sounded, they began to move, but before they could make any significant progress toward the enemy base, a massive iceberg appeared before them. This was a troubling sign. Atop the icy mountain sat Todoroki Shoto, wearing an amused expression. He remarked that he had encountered Team B first and speculated that Bakugo had likely found Midoriya already. Nervousness spread among the group of students as they faced the daunting challenge. Kirishima encouraged them to get past Todoroki, but the task seemed easier said than done. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 emerged from an alley, surrounding the group and taking a fighting stance, declaring that he needed to work hard to avoid being overshadowed. Back to Team A, Yaoyorozu moved quietly through the streets and alleys, carefully checking every corner before sprinting to the next cover. She even created a pair of binoculars to spot the enemy hideout from a distance and set up tripwires with small rattles to prevent a surprise attack from behind. Despite her reluctance to admit it, she recognized Midoriya's ingenuity in analyzing the situation and planning ahead. Moments later, she heard a loud explosion in the distance, followed by the sight of a massive iceberg forming. She now had a lead on the enemy base but knew that heading straight there could lead to running into more opponents or Team B. With this in mind, she decided to take a small detour, moving faster now that she knew her destination. As she sprinted across the street, she reached a large garage and entered it. Crossing through would allow her to avoid detection and reach her goal quickly. The dark space was filled with crates, creating a maze-like environment. She conjured a small candle, finding it easier than using an electric lantern, and navigated the maze until she felt something latch onto her ankle. Bringing the candle closer, her heart raced as she recognized the small purple sphere attached to her, knowing exactly who was responsible for it. An ominous laugh echoed in the space, welcoming her to his web. Minetta's voice rang out, and despite her initial worry, she couldn't help but feel a sense of annoyance. He insisted he could hear her, and she retorted that she could hear him too. Jiro's voice joined the fray, questioning why she would team up with Minetta. The banter continued, with both Minetta and Jiro arguing about their predicament, unaware of the tension building around them. Yaoyorozu pressed on cautiously, holding the candle close to the ground. She was determined not to let Minetta's antics distract her, knowing that if she got caught in those purple spheres, she would be in serious trouble. Just as she turned a corner, she was startled to find Jiro there, already entangled in some of Minetta's traps. Jiro signaled for silence and connected one of her jacks to a crate. Yaoyorozu understood her intention and quickly created something. Jiro unplugged from the crate and noticed a small piece of paper that had been thrown near her foot. It read, "I have a plan." Jiro listened intently. Team A, Midoriya and 𝐼𝐻 Midoriya was in a precarious situation as Bakugo shouted, threatening to unleash his explosive power. 𝐼𝐻 observed the intensity of Bakugo's aggression and noted that it could be worse. He then asked what the plan was while they concealed themselves under the water tank. They had already tested their strategy, knowing that if 𝐼𝐻 launched a tape to escape, Aoyama would cut it with his naval laser. Bakugo was waiting for Midoriya out in the open, eager for a fight, but also blocking their path. Midoriya couldn't risk being caught by Aoyama, and 𝐼𝐻 stood no chance against Bakugo in direct combat. Unless 𝐼𝐻 listened as Midoriya proposed a risky idea that required swift action. They prepared to execute their plan. Midoriya activated full cowl and positioned himself for a sprint, while 𝐼𝐻 readied his tape. On the count of 3, Midoriya dashed from their hiding spot and leaped at Bakugo, his fist poised to strike. Bakugo's grin widened as he effortlessly dodged the attack, anticipating Midoriya's move. In a fluid motion, Bakugo twisted on his feet and unleashed an explosion, sending Midoriya flying away, who narrowly escaped due to his momentum. Midoriya rolled to his feet, evading another explosive punch by mere inches. Bakugo shouted for Midoriya to stop running and face him, but Midoriya was determined. He knew he had to create an opening. Faking a jump to the side, he closed the distance between himself and 𝐃𝐿. The explosive teen reacted just in time, but not quickly enough. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 seized 𝐃𝐿's wrists and pushed his arms down just before the explosion erupted, creating a cloud of dust. Inspired by 𝗟𝗏, 𝐼𝐻𝐻 aimed to obscure 𝐒𝐮𝐬's vision with the dust. He had calculated 𝐒𝐮𝐬's likely position based on the angle of the lasers and the distance from which he could shoot. Seizing the moment, 𝗟𝗧 launched his tapes in two different directions. One was cut by the laser, while the other adhered to a nearby building. Using all his strength, 𝗟𝗧 retracted the tape, swiftly exiting the area and swinging around the building in a low arc. 𝐃𝐿 noticed and leaped to intercept 𝗟𝗧, but as soon as his feet left the ground, he had to use his blast to dodge 𝐼𝐻𝐻's attack. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 barely missed his target but knew he only needed to buy time for 𝗟𝗧 to continue with the plan. He planted his hands on the ground and executed a powerful kick, forcing 𝐃𝐿 to evade once more. Meanwhile, 𝗟𝗧 maneuvered around the buildings, staying out of 𝐒𝐮𝐬's line of sight. When 𝗟𝗧 finally located his opponent, it was too late. He crashed through the window and quickly wrapped 𝐒𝐮𝐬 in tape, immobilizing him. The cocoon forced 𝐒𝐮𝐬 into a position that prevented him from using his laser to cut the tape. 𝗟𝗧 apologized for the awkward situation, assuring 𝐒𝐮𝐬 that he would help him out later. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 nodded, tears glistening on his face. Team B, against Todoroki and Ojiro Kirishima, asked Ishido if their plan would work as he defended against Ojiro's attacks with his hardening quirk. Ishido, dodging another geyser of ice, replied that it was the best she could come up with. Todoroki appeared calm as he sat atop an ice block, generating ice faster than Ishido's acid could melt it. Whenever they attempted to approach, walls of flames erupted in their path. Ojiro was also breaking their formation by engaging them in one-on-one fights, making communication difficult. Exchanging determined glances, they set their plan into motion. Kirishima shifted his focus from Ojiro to Todoroki, charging straight at the fire and ice user. Ojiro pursued him but found his path blocked by Ishido. Kirishima ran past Sato, who grabbed him by the arm and launched him like a cannonball at Todoroki. An ice wall appeared, but Kirishima shattered it with his quirk. Now in close range, he had a chance to stop Todoroki, but he still had to contend with the flames. The heat was intense, even with the protection his quirk provided. Unless Kirishima activated his ultimate move, Red Riot Unbreakable. Realizing the danger of allowing Kirishima to stay close, Todoroki intensified the heat and flames, engulfing Kirishima in a massive inferno. However, to Todoroki's surprise, Kirishima burst through the flames, arm drawn back for a powerful strike. If Todoroki hadn't reacted quickly enough to create an ice pillar between them, Kirishima would have sent him flying. Kirishima's punch broke through the ice and struck Todoroki, though with less force than he had intended. Todoroki, still smiling, remarked on their strength. Kirishima, though grinning, felt the toll of his quirk as his skin returned to normal. Acknowledged that he needed to improve his endurance. As they spoke, the glacier Todoroki had created earlier began to shake. He turned to see Sato punching through it, creating an opening for Tsuyu, who quickly dashed through, eager to escape. Sato could not allow Todoroki to do as he pleased. He charged at Todoroki, fists clenched, but Todoroki swiftly created another ice wall, this one thinner than the last. Sato smirked, teasing Todoroki about his dwindling ice supply. Todoroki countered with a jab about Sato's sugar consumption, to which Sato responded playfully. Meanwhile, Ishido was still holding Ojiro, pleased that her plan was working. Tsuyu was one of the fastest among them and had trouble with both Todoroki's flames and ice, so she needed to escape first. To do that, they had to distract Todoroki while Sato broke the barrier and kept Ojiro occupied. Ishido, being athletic, managed to keep Ojiro at bay, though his tail made things challenging. She couldn't overpower him, so she aimed to throw him off balance using his own strength, but his tail was a formidable asset, preventing him from falling. An idea struck her, and she began to dart around him, sliding with her acid and narrowly avoiding his attacks. Ojiro called out to her, urging her to stay still, but Ishido was determined to win. She launched drops of acid at him, but he leaped high using his tail to evade the attack. He taunted her, insisting she needed to do better to stop him. 𝐼𝐮𝐲 grinned, confident she had him right where she wanted him. When 𝐼𝐮𝐲 landed, he realized the ground was slick with her acid, causing him to slip just as 𝐼𝐮𝐲 had melted a lamp post, sending it crashing down toward him. It wasn't heavy, but without solid footing he found himself pinned. 𝐼𝐮𝐲 reassured him that she would help him later, just as something flew overhead. Earlier, 𝐒𝐮𝐲 had arrived at the scene, witnessing the chaos. Unsure of what was happening, he knew he needed to slip past without getting caught. He launched tape onto the buildings and stepped back, creating a human slingshot. As the tension built, he leaped into the air, soaring over Team B and the villains, much to 𝐼𝐮𝐲's surprise. She chased after him, determined not to let him escape. Todoroki considered pursuing them but was forced to stay focused as Sato continued to hurl ice blocks his way. He could melt them with his flames, but his goal was to keep Sato in place. Meanwhile, Team A was dealing with their own challenges. Jiro shouted for Mineta, vowing to give him a beating he wouldn't forget while Yaoyorozu focused on creating something on the floor. Mineta, in his usual manner, made a cheeky comment, which only fueled Jiro's anger. She was frustrated with both him and herself for getting caught in this situation. The game had begun, and she had wandered into a garage, only to find herself ensnared by Mineta's traps. Jiro warned Mineta that he would regret his actions, but he continued to mock her. She plugged one of her jacks into a crate, determined to find him. They moved cautiously, avoiding the traps Mineta had set. Jiro used her quirk to locate him, expressing disbelief at the number of traps. Mineta had run away as soon as they entered ground beta, scattering his traps everywhere. Jiro and Yaoyorozu strategized, determined to find him. Mineta, sensing danger, tried to defend himself, but his bravado faltered as he realized the two girls were closing in on him. When Jiro and Yaoyorozu finally confronted him, Mineta stammered an apology, but it was too late. Jiro cracked her knuckles while Yaoyorozu prepared a makeshift restraint. Mineta found himself dizzy and tied up in a straitjacket, additional restraints securing him tightly. Tears of regret filled his eyes, not for his actions, but for missing a chance to impress Yaoyorozu. Outside the garage, Jiro and Yaoyorozu let out a sigh of relief, feeling victorious in their encounter. Yaoyorozu took a few steps back, creating a staff and assuming a fighting stance, leaving Jiro looking confused. She questioned what Jiro was doing, to which Jiro explained that he wasn't in the mood for villainy and suggested they could just say he won. Yaoyorozu expressed surprise at his response, and Jiro reassured her that he didn't think the real villain would come over. Yaoyorozu advised him not to take the main road since Todoroki was nearby, and Jiro thanked her before departing. As Yaoyorozu resumed her task, Jiro found a spot to rest, both of them with thoughts of a certain green-haired boy. Bakugo was furious, a familiar twitch in his left eye and his teeth grinding together. He confronted Midoriya, expressing his longing to win, while Midoriya insisted he wouldn't back down. Bakugo launched a powerful blast that propelled him forward, narrowly missing Midoriya. The ensuing battle was intense, with Bakugo throwing explosive punches that Midoriya skillfully dodged. Midoriya, on the defensive, was determined not to give up, even as Bakugo threatened him with a close-range explosion. Midoriya, using his full cowl, leaped high into the air, grabbing Bakugo's shirt and spinning them both. With a powerful move, he sent Bakugo crashing into a nearby building, allowing him to escape and continue his mission. He needed to regroup with his teammates and quickly decided to search for 𝐼𝐮𝐲, but instead spotted 𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐸. Realizing Team B had likely split up, he weighed the options of supporting his teammates or preventing 𝐼𝐻𝐸 from reaching their hideout. 𝐼𝐻𝐸 was moving quickly, having seen 𝐼𝐮𝐲 moments before. She chose speed over stealth, but soon found herself confronted by a figure crackling with energy. The tension was palpable as she faced Kaminari, who blocked her path. 𝐼𝐻𝐸's expression shifted to one of anger, and she confronted him about his actions, revealing her frustration. Midoriya, sensing the change in her demeanor, tried to defuse the situation, but 𝐼𝐻𝐸's anger was evident. She demanded to know what he had done to Ochako, and Midoriya instinctively stepped back, realizing the gravity of her feelings. 𝐼𝐻𝐸, fueled by her emotions, launched an attack, and Midoriya knew he had to act quickly to clarify the misunderstandings surrounding his relationship with 𝗟𝗏. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 jumped at him, using her agility to gain momentum, and the confrontation escalated as they both prepared for the next move. Midoriya defended himself easily but was surprised by the strength 𝐒𝐮𝐬 displayed. Perhaps he underestimated her abilities, but there was little time to dwell on it as she took a leap at him again. She continued to strike and bounce back, not giving him a chance to counter. Her speed allowed her to evade his punches mid-air, and she showed no signs of tiring. Determined to match her energy, he activated full cowl and began to jump around, mimicking 𝐒𝐮𝐬 but covering greater distances with each leap, albeit with less precision. He realized he could learn a thing or two from her if she weren't so intent on defeating him. The fight resembled a pinball game as the two teens soared through the air, exchanging hits and bouncing off one another. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 landed atop a lamp post and used her tongue to anticipate Midoriya's landing, capturing him momentarily. He struggled against her grip, careful to hold back his strength. In a sudden move, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 released her hold and propelled herself toward him, knocking him off balance. Reacting quickly, Midoriya planted his hands on the ground and used his shoot style to swing his legs around her, sending her to the ground. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 sprang back up, but Midoriya was quicker, surprising her with a feigned punch and securing her in a headlock, his arms wrapped beneath hers and hands clasped behind her neck. She struggled to break free, but he tightened his grip. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 called out to him, asking where he learned such moves. He replied that 𝗟𝗟 had given him some lessons. After a moment of struggle, she suddenly relaxed, letting out a tired breath and conceding that he could do whatever he wanted. Midoriya was confused, wondering if she was referring to a previous conversation about 𝗟𝗏. He insisted he would never harm her and that she was still the same person, despite any changes in her demeanor. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 expressed skepticism about his words, questioning if he would take her along too, implying that he preferred defenseless girls relying on him. Before he could respond, a loud blast interrupted them, causing him to release 𝐒𝐮𝐬 to cover his ears. He then received a kick to the stomach. When the noise subsided, he saw Jiro helping 𝐒𝐮𝐬 up. She asked if he was all right and if Midoriya had done anything to her. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 assured her she was fine but would feel better after hitting him in the face. Both girls appeared ready to confront him, and Midoriya realized he had wasted too much time without explaining himself. Deciding it was best to flee, he activated full cowl and dashed away, with Jiro and 𝐒𝐮𝐬 in pursuit, completely ignoring the training objective. In another part of the training, 𝗏𝗏 was learning not to take it easy on his classmates. He hurled ice blocks and other heavy objects at Todoroki, who had to dodge or use his flames to counter. However, he was starting to feel fatigued, both mentally and physically. 𝗏𝗏's sugar rush had increased in duration, and unlike earlier in the year when he would have been asleep, he was surprisingly focused. Todoroki had also improved his flame control and learned to use both powers together, but he still struggled with prolonged fights, feeling the strain on his body. 𝗏𝗏 picked up another ice block and tossed it at Todoroki, who melted it into a cloud of steam. However, from the cloud, a piece of metal, an old street sign, came swinging toward him. Todoroki quickly created an ice pillar, but it wasn't fast enough to prevent some damage. 𝗏𝗏, thinking Todoroki was weak, attempted to bind him with the bent street sign. Kirishima had exhausted himself using his quirk and was resting inside a nearby building. Todoroki, breathing heavily from the impact, found 𝗏𝗏 towering over him, ready to secure him to the ground. 𝗏𝗏's confidence faltered when Todoroki trapped him in an ice pillar. 𝗏𝗏 was surprised, questioning how Todoroki still had ice left. Todoroki explained that he had learned to save some for emergencies. 𝗏𝗏, feeling the cold and fatigue, began to doze off. As Todoroki checked on his classmate, he noticed a blur above him, a glimpse of green that he recognized as Midoriya. Following closely behind were Jiro and 𝐒𝐮𝐬, clearly in pursuit of him. Worn out, Todoroki chose not to intervene, allowing himself to slide down onto the ice block where 𝗏𝗏 was trapped, knowing he would melt the ice soon. Meanwhile, 𝗟𝗏 had spotted 𝗏𝗏, impressed that she managed to keep up with him. He swung himself up to the rooftops, evading her line of sight as he sought to discover the location of their base. As for the pink-skinned girl in the street, she skidded to a halt. She realized she had lost her target, but he didn't seem to know where the base was. Still, he was close, so she decided to warn Kaminari. She then dashed through an alley and entered a tall building from the back door, unaware of the observer trailing her. From the rooftop, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 had been watching her since he arrived. He also spotted someone else, Yaoyorozu. He quickly jumped down and made his way to her, sharing what he had seen. He informed her that Todoroki was nearby and that Midoriya was holding Deku. Yaoyorozu then decided to enter the building and try to capture the flag themselves. Their plan was straightforward. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 would break in and keep Ishido, and possibly Kaminari, occupied while Yaoyorozu searched for the flag. Once she found it, she would create a distraction, hand the flag to 𝐼𝐻𝐬, and hold off the enemies for as long as she could, allowing her teammate to return to the base safely. It seemed like a solid plan, and so they set it in motion. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 positioned himself on the rooftop of a building across from the one Ishido had entered, while Yaoyorozu waited at the corner, ready to make her move. On the count of 3, the black-haired boy leaped and used his tapes to latch onto the wall, propelling himself past the window of the 3rd floor, where he had spotted a silhouette he believed to be Ishido. What he encountered was surprising, a mannequin wearing a wig that resembled Ishido's hair. Suddenly, from the shadows, the real Ishido emerged in a flip, like a gymnast, and kicked 𝐼𝐻𝐬, causing him to crash to the ground. The wooden floor broke under his weight, and he fell through the other floors until he landed in the underground garage. Ishido had used her acid to weaken the structure in certain areas, creating a trap. Dazed but determined, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 struggled to recover, but he had little time as a bolt of electricity shot up from the ground, nearly hitting him. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 recognized Kaminari's voice and realized that if he was there, this must be the base. Kaminari taunted him, claiming they had hidden it elsewhere. Ishido, having just arrived through the stairs, slapped Kaminari behind the head for revealing their location and then rushed to cut off 𝐼𝐻𝐬's escape routes. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 felt desperate, glancing around for an opening, and then looked up at the hole he had fallen through, a smirk forming on his face as he realized he had backup. He declared that Kaminari didn't know how to count, revealing that he wasn't alone. Just then, the ceiling above Kaminari gave way, and Midoriya broke through, his fist smashing through the concrete. Moments earlier, Yaoyorozu had overheard Kaminari's loud comments about the hideout and spotted Midoriya running. She quickly explained their plan to him, and he was ready to join the fight. Now in the underground, Midoriya leaped at Kaminari, grabbing him and tossing him aside, while 𝐼𝐻𝐬 attempted to immobilize Ishido, but her acid was melting his tape. Midoriya called for a change, and he jumped at one of the walls before leaping toward Ishido. She countered with her special move, creating a wall of acid, but Midoriya had a plan. With a flick of his finger, he unleashed a powerful gust of wind that blew away the acid wall, causing some of it to fall onto Ishido. While the acid wasn't strong enough to hurt her, it did sting and melted her breathes, revealing light pink underwear adorned with small red ribbons. Both of them froze, their eyes locked on the unexpected sight. When Midoriya broke through the ceiling, he also damaged some pipes, causing water to pool around them. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 was managing to outmaneuver Kaminari, using his tape to block most of the electric discharges aimed at him. Following a tactic suggested by Midoriya, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 jumped around Kaminari, dodging his attacks with ease while throwing tape, but never landing a hit. He acknowledged that Kaminari had skills, but not enough to catch him. Kaminari grew frustrated and challenged 𝐼𝐻𝐬 to stop running. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 responded with confidence, pulling one of his tapes to initiate a chain reaction that wrapped the electric teen in a cocoon of tape. He named the move Spider Trap, to which Kaminari suggested it needed to be more flashy. In response, Kaminari unleashed his maximum output, sending a surge of electricity through the ground. 𝐼𝐻𝐬, standing in a puddle of water, was caught off guard and was electrocuted, fainting as smoke rose from his uniform and the faint smell of burnt tape filled the air. Meanwhile, Kaminari, as expected, short-circuited and remained wrapped in tape, his expression blank. Back to Midoriya and Ishido, they were still staring at the unexpected situation. Midoriya was the first to react, stammering an apology, but Ishido, undeterred, charged at him like a lioness hunting her prey, her hands coated in acid. Midoriya's eyes widened in shock as he barely avoided her attack. Ishido shouted in anger, calling him names and accusing him of being a pervert and an enemy of all women. Midoriya protested that it wasn't intentional, but Ishido was relentless, recalling a previous incident with Uraraka. Just then, he was struck from behind and sent crashing into a column. Azui and Jiro had just arrived, and Midoriya barely managed to get up, noticing a kunai lodged near his head, sending a chill down his spine. He looked up to see Yaoyorozu glaring at him from the hole above, already crafting more dangerous objects. She must have witnessed the scene from above, as she was the one who had signaled 𝐼𝐼𝐻. Midoriya felt a wave of dread wash over him at the thought of her anger. As the tension mounted, the scene shifted back in time to when Todoroki and Sato were engaged in their own battle. Sato was keeping Todoroki occupied, providing Kirishima the opportunity to make his move as soon as he regained some energy. Although he couldn't use his quirk effectively, he was still able to move. As he ran through the streets, the sound of distant explosions echoed around him. Kirishima soon encountered Bakugo, who rushed over and grabbed his uniform, urgency in his voice. Bakugo demanded to know where Midoriya was. Kirishima replied that he hadn't seen him but guessed he was likely heading to their base. Bakugo pressed for the location of the base, and Kirishima pointed him in the right direction, indicating a small store nestled between two tall garages. Before Bakugo took off, he called back to Kirishima, pointing out the direction of a column of smoke nearby. He urged Kirishima to secure the flag, confident that Midoriya wouldn't win that day. Kirishima acknowledged Bakugo's unconventional way of helping and set off toward the smoke. As he got closer, Kirishima felt a wave of nervousness wash over him. A large hole had formed in the side of a store, and he spotted Shoji moving rocks around, seemingly searching for something. Then he heard a familiar voice call out that they had found the flag. Both Shoji and Kirishima turned to see a blue uniform bouncing with excitement, a small green ball hovering above it. Shoji noticed Kirishima and exchanged a glance before turning back to his invisible teammate, urging 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿 to escape. Kirishima, determined to capture the flag, declared his intent to get past Shoji. He knew it would be a challenge without his quirk, but he had to think quickly. Shoji, fatigued from the chaos, was caught off guard when Bakugo suddenly appeared, blasting everything in sight and shouting Midoriya's name along with a string of expletives. The flag had been lost amidst the rubble, and Shoji had shielded 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿 from a secondary explosion. After Bakugo left, they needed to find the flag before relocating their hideout. As 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿 finally spotted the flag, Kirishima arrived on the scene. They exchanged a few punches, neither backing down. In that moment, Kirishima decided to change tactics. He called out to Ishido and Tsuyu, instructing them to pursue 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿 while he held Shoji back. Shoji hesitated, considering the situation. Kirishima had come alone, but if Midoriya's assessment of Team B's movements was accurate, the rest of his team should be nearby. However, he detected no one on his radar. Just then, a noise from around the corner caught Shoji's attention. In that split second, Kirishima dove under Shoji, grabbing his legs and lifting him off the ground, sending him tumbling. Kirishima tossed a rock around the corner to distract Shoji, knowing it wasn't the most honorable way to get past him, but it would have to suffice. Now, he needed to chase after 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿. Emerging from the remains of the store, Kirishima spotted 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿's clothes in the middle of the street. Shoji followed closely behind, his eyes widening at the sight of the floating uniform. He urged 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿 to run, but she was confused, thinking Kirishima could handle Shoji. Both Kirishima and Shoji took off after 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿, who panicked and fled. Kirishima was slightly faster than Shoji and kept pace with 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿, while Shoji began to lag behind. 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿 dashed through the streets, with Kirishima close behind and Shoji trying to keep up. They soon found themselves on a road where Todoroki, Sato, and Ojiro were stuck in a slippery trap. 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿 quickly turned to avoid them, weaving through alleys and passages between buildings, deciding to use her tactical advantage of invisibility. Meanwhile, Midoriya was in a tight spot, having to escape from a group of aggressive girls who were intent on capturing him. He had been forced to leave his hiding spot underground, and now he was dodging punches, kicks, and other projectiles. He had no idea where the enemy flag was, as their last hideout had been a decoy. Time was running out, and he felt the pressure mounting. In a moment of quick thinking, he managed to bounce 𝐒𝐻𝐬 back when she tried to kick him, sending her flying toward 𝐾𝐞𝐭 and interrupting her quirk. He grabbed 𝐼shido's arm and executed a toss move, propelling himself away from Yaoyorozu and her staff. However, fate had other plans, and he landed awkwardly, falling forward. To his surprise, Midoriya found himself suspended above the ground, feeling a warm, soft sensation on his face. Confused, he realized what had happened and quickly stood up, flustered and apologizing profusely. He didn't dare look at 𝐒𝐻𝐬, his cheek burning with embarrassment from the unexpected encounter. The slap had been minor compared to the powerful blows he had endured, but it left him shaken nonetheless. To add even more fuel to the fire, rather a tank of gasoline, Midoriya could sense the menacing presence of the 4 other girls who had been after him just moments ago. He wondered if this was the end. The familiar voice of Bakugo, calling out his nickname, snapped Midoriya back to reality. Almost instantly, he activated full cowl and jumped away, narrowly avoiding the impact of Bakugo landing with tremendous force. In the process, he instinctively grabbed 𝐒𝐻𝐬, who flailed in his arms to escape. He gently set her down and turned to face his rival, who emerged from the crater he had created, glaring with intense rage. Midoriya realized he had a choice: deal with the 5 girls who wanted to capture him or confront Bakugo in his furious state. The decision was clear. Bakugo charged at Midoriya, unleashing an explosion so powerful that it demolished half of the store behind him. Midoriya leaped to evade the destruction, but the maneuver came at a cost. He found himself plummeting back down, unable to dodge Bakugo's next attack. Just as Bakugo prepared to unleash a devastating blast, 𝐒𝐻𝐬 intervened, using her quirk to pull Midoriya away from danger while still in midair. However, as he landed, he hit the ground face first, narrowly avoiding a strike from Yaoyorozu's staff. He quickly regained his footing and distanced himself from the group of girls. Bakugo shouted for everyone to stay out of his way as he pursued Midoriya, who was desperately trying to avoid harm. It seemed that everyone wanted to take him down. Kirishima, however, was busy digging through the debris of the destroyed store, searching for the flag. He muttered to himself, wondering where it could be. Shoji, positioned away from the chaos, used his quirk to gather valuable information and decided to act. Once Kirishima found the flag, Shoji snuck up behind him, flipping the redhead over and seizing the enemy flag. Kirishima exclaimed that he had it, while Midoriya called out to him. Bakugo, not to be outdone, landed a direct hit on Midoriya, sending him crashing into a mailbox. As Midoriya struggled to recover, Bakugo launched himself into the air, ready to deliver another explosive punch. But Shoji intervened, holding Bakugo's arms and causing the attack to miss. Shoji created an extra hand and passed the flag to Midoriya, who managed to grab it and run, understanding Shoji's plan. Bakugo freed himself and attempted to kick Shoji, who managed to hold his ground. Kirishima was already sprinting after Midoriya when he spotted the Team A flag floating near Ishido and 𝐒𝐻𝐬. He urged them to get the flag, emphasizing that they would win if they brought it to the base. However, they ignored him and continued their pursuit of Midoriya, who activated full cowl again, wincing as his body protested from the earlier blows. Midoriya shouted for them to focus on the flag in 𝐒𝐻𝐬's hand. 𝐒𝐻𝐬 barely missed wrapping him with her tongue as he leaped at the last second. Bakugo, now free, rocketed toward Midoriya, ready to blast him. Kirishima was closing in on 𝐒𝐻𝐬 when the horn finally sounded. The game was over, and Team A won by securing the enemy flag just in time. Kirishima stumbled and fell to the ground, so close to victory. Bakugo landed and immediately began shouting in frustration. Midoriya, finally able to stop running, let out a tired breath, hoping for some peace. However, he was suddenly tackled from behind, bringing him to the ground, where a pile of girls formed on top of him, all eager to hold him down. He had to use his quirk once more to slowly rise, and it took Kirishima, Shoji, slightly singed 𝐼shido, and Todoroki to free him from his pursuers. By now, Midoriya bore scratches and bruises all over, but thankfully his bones remained intact. The reason All Might had not intervened during the chaos was that he had to take medicine to prevent coughing fits, but he had forgotten it in the teacher's room. Meanwhile, Tokoyami, Ida, Uraraka, and Koji stood by, watching the action unfold, too stunned to speak. Somewhere in town, Aoyama finally escaped his predicament, focusing his laser with precision, proud of his accomplishment. Mineta, on the other hand, remained stuck and regretful over missed opportunities. The other match progressed much more smoothly, with both teams focused on capturing each other's flags. The previous villains and those monitoring the game were divided into two teams. Team C, consisting of Bakugo, Ida, Uraraka, Mineta, and Aoyama, and Team D, made up of Todoroki, Jiro, Tokoyami, Koji, and Ojiro. Midoriya, Ishido, Hagakure, and Sato stood out due to the effects of their quirks. Midoriya kept his distance from the girls throughout the match. Ultimately, Team C emerged victorious, benefiting from Ida's speed and Bakugo's fierce offensive to counter Todoroki's defensive strategy. After being dismissed by All Might and a half-asleep Aizawa, the students headed to the bathroom for a well-deserved shower. Midoriya was the first to enter and exit, rushing to the dorms before anyone could catch up to him. He went straight to his room, locked the door, and flopped onto his bed, quickly falling asleep. He only stirred when he heard a knock on the door and a soft voice he recognized well, asking if he was all right and noting that he had been in his room since the special class ended. He wondered how long he had been asleep. It felt like only minutes had passed, maybe half an hour at most. He slowly got up and walked to the door, hesitating for a moment before unlocking and opening it. Uraraka stood there, her eyes filled with concern and a small smile on her face. She asked if she could come in, and he welcomed her inside. She sat on his bed while he closed the door and took a seat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. The brunette pouted slightly at the space between them but let it go, inching a bit closer to her boyfriend. He yawned and wondered how long he had been sleeping. She informed him that it was already dark outside and that he had missed both lunch and dinner. He expressed his surprise at having fallen asleep so deeply. Uraraka had anticipated his hunger and saved some food for him, offering a small box wrapped in pink tissue. He opened it to find meat and potato stew along with a generous portion of rice, still warm and steaming. She admitted to reheating it in the microwave, hoping he wouldn't mind. His stomach growled loudly, causing them both to laugh, and a blush crept onto his cheeks. As he ate quietly, he appreciated the meal she had brought him. It wasn't the legendary homemade dish he had dreamed of, but it was made with care, which meant a lot to him. However, an awkward silence settled between them, a stark contrast to their usual lively conversations. Eventually, he handed her the empty box, thanking her for the food, but the silence lingered. He stared at the carpet, lost in thought until he finally sighed and rested his head in his hands, admitting that he had messed up badly. Uraraka tried to reassure him, but he insisted it was his fault for not thinking things through. He acknowledged that he liked her and enjoyed their time together, but felt there was a right way to handle things. She reminded him that she had made her choices because she wanted to, taking responsibility for her actions. He hesitated, struggling to articulate his feelings, but she encouraged him to continue. He confessed that since she first approached him, she seemed different, and he wondered if he had said something earlier, perhaps things would have turned out differently. Uraraka questioned if he believed that or if it was merely what others had said. He admitted that it made sense in a way. She reminded him that she had fallen for him during their time together and playfully suggested that if he wanted to blame himself, it should be for being so charming and fit. As they shared a light moment, she tickled him, causing him to laugh uncontrollably. She expressed how appealing he looked when he laughed and insisted that they should be happy together, regardless of what others thought. After a brief moment of laughter, she let him catch his breath and asked if he felt better. He nodded, still contemplating their situation. She acknowledged that she had struggled with her feelings for him but emphasized that it was normal to react to attraction. She reassured him that he wasn't to blame for looking good, it was simply a natural reaction. He asked about what others had said regarding her change. She explained that true understanding comes from spending meaningful time together. While her friends knew her well, He had come to know her on a deeper level. Curious, he inquired if she had always been interested in certain things. She admitted that she had discovered new feelings for him, which had changed her perspective. He was taken aback by her straightforwardness but found it refreshing. As their conversation continued, 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐻 playfully teased him about his innocence, and he struggled to respond to her boldness. She climbed on top of him, acting flirtatiously, and they shared a moment of closeness, both aware of the bond they were building. Just to tease the boy a bit, she pressed against his chest, making him blush, and planted a quick kiss on his lips before running her hand through his curly hair. She assured him that she would talk to the girls later to clear things up. He expressed his concerns about how things had gone when he tried to address the situation earlier and mentioned that they had spoken to her before. She explained that people often don't listen when they are upset, and since she had been angry the day before, it was best to wait until they calmed down. She was confident they would understand. He trusted her to find a way. She found him sweet and playfully suggested they could catch up on lost time. He acknowledged her suggestion but insisted they should keep things low-key until they sorted everything out. She agreed, recognizing he was right, and they both looked forward to the future. After a quick peck on his lips, 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐻 got up, grabbed her lunchbox, and waved goodbye as she left Midoriya's room. He felt relieved, as if a heavy weight had been lifted. This side of 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐻 was something no one else knew about, and that made him feel special. They shared a unique bond, and he cherished the thought of knowing her better than anyone else, understanding what made her happy and what she disliked. Meanwhile, 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐻 lay on her bed, contemplating how to approach her friends about her feelings for Deku-kun. She thought that the best way to convince someone was to have them experience it for themselves, though she noted that it might not apply literally in this case. A mischievous smile formed on her lips as she planned how to help her friends see Deku-kun in a new light. Monday morning arrived, and as the sun rose, Midoriya was running laps on the track, finishing his 10th. He was still anxious about the situation with the girls in his class, so he decided to exercise to distract himself. He had spent half of Sunday at the gym and the other half swimming, keeping a safe distance from any potential confrontations. After washing up and getting ready for class, he quietly ate breakfast and headed to the classroom, enjoying the peace before everyone arrived. Iida, usually the first to arrive, was surprised to see Midoriya waiting so early and complimented him on his exemplary behavior. They chatted about the upcoming classes and training until their classmates began to fill the room. The usual noise and chatter filled the space, and Iida waved his arms to maintain order, while Midoriya noticed the subtle glares directed at him. When Aizawa-sensei entered, class began as usual. Lunch and hero training followed. During lunch, a group of girls who had been glaring at Midoriya were approached by 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐻, who seemed a bit nervous. She asked if they were free later to discuss something important. They exchanged worried glances but agreed to meet her. 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐻 walked away to sit with Iida and Midoriya, eating her food with her usual enthusiasm. After class, the girls received a message to meet 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐻 in front of Ground Gamma at 10 p.m. They found the time and location unusual but thought she might be feeling embarrassed or worried about Midoriya being around. At 10 o'clock, Yaoyorozu arrived at the Ground Gamma front gate. It was slightly dark, and she waited for 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐻 to arrive, wondering what the discussion would be about. Suddenly, everything went black. Yaoyorozu slowly regained consciousness, feeling something was off. She realized she was upside down with her hands tied. She also noticed her friends Ishido, Azui, Jiro, and Hagakure floating beside her, all in the same predicament. They all shared similar confusion about their situation. 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐻, now upside down in front of them, explained that she wanted to talk but doubted they would listen at first. They urged her to untie them, but she playfully refused, warning them not to use their quirks to escape. With a serious expression, she revealed that she and Deku-kun were now dating, and he was feeling upset about things they had said and done. She acknowledged their anger over the previous incident but urged them to reconsider their actions. 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐻 felt a mix of determination and excitement as she faced her friends. She noticed the concern in their eyes, especially in Tsuyu's gaze. Tsuyu expressed her disbelief, commenting on how different 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐻 seemed. 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐻 sighed, acknowledging the change in herself, but insisted that it was not entirely about her. It was about Midoriya, whom she believed was a good person despite the misunderstandings. Yaoyorozu questioned Uraraka about what made Midoriya so special to her. Uraraka's face lit up as she described his kindness and how adorable he looked when nervous. She felt a warmth in her heart when she thought of him, and she couldn't help but smile at the thought of his freckles and curly green hair. The atmosphere shifted as Uraraka playfully teased her friends, making them blush with her comments. She knew they had witnessed a private moment between her and Midoriya, and she could sense their curiosity. 𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐸, feeling flustered, tried to deny any interest, but Uraraka challenged her, suggesting that deep down, they were all intrigued. Tsuyu expressed her confusion about Uraraka's transformation, but Uraraka reassured her that she was still the same person, just revealing a different side. She explained that Midoriya hadn't changed her intentionally, it was simply a part of her that had emerged. As the conversation continued, 𝐼𝐻𝐸, still tied up, demanded to be released. Uraraka, however, had other plans. She pulled 𝐼𝐻𝐸 closer, teasing her about needing to understand her feelings for Midoriya. Uraraka's playful demeanor took a more serious turn as she explained her attraction to him, revealing her own struggles with her emotions. Despite 𝐼𝐻𝐸's protests, Uraraka was determined to share her experience, believing that understanding her feelings would help her friends see Midoriya in a new light. The playful banter continued, filled with laughter and camaraderie, as the friends navigated their feelings and the complexities of their relationships. Everyone was so eager to get close to him, just like 𝐼𝐻𝐸. It was because they didn't know him as well as she did, but that could change soon. Uraraka had called him over, and she was confident everyone would like him. She playfully warned 𝐼𝐻𝐸 not to get jealous, as she intended to keep him all to herself. 𝐼𝐻𝐸 was incredulous, insisting that Uraraka let her go. But Uraraka was determined to keep her friend close. In a teasing manner, she playfully restrained 𝐼𝐻𝐸, causing her to squirm and protest. The others watched in disbelief as the scene unfolded before them. Uraraka noticed 𝐼𝐻𝐸's reaction and teased her further, suggesting that perhaps she was enjoying it. 𝐼𝐻𝐸 struggled to deny it, feeling a mix of embarrassment and unexpected pleasure. She wondered if Uraraka felt this way every time she was alone with Midoriya. As Uraraka continued to tease, 𝐼𝐻𝐸 felt overwhelmed, caught between her feelings of shame and the undeniable thrill. Uraraka's playful comments only added to her flustered state, making her question what Midoriya would think if he saw her like this. Just as 𝐼𝐻𝐸 felt she might lose control, Uraraka decided it was time to move on, gently releasing her and allowing her to float back up, leaving 𝐼𝐻𝐸 in a daze. 𝐼𝐻𝐸's face flushed a bright purple as she watched Uraraka calmly approach another rope, the one that held 𝐼𝐻𝐸. 𝐼𝐻𝐸 was out of breath and confused, wondering what had just happened. Uraraka, with a playful tone, explained that she had simply pushed 𝐼𝐻𝐸 to her limits in a teasing manner, insisting it was no big deal. 𝐻𝐸 questioned why Uraraka didn't just finish what she started, to which Uraraka replied that she would never take away such an important moment from her friend. Uraraka then turned her attention to 𝐻𝐻𝐸, pulling the rope down and positioning herself above her. 𝐻𝐻𝐸, lying on her back, caught Uraraka's hand with her tongue, surprising her at first. However, a mischievous smirk soon appeared on Uraraka's lips as she playfully engaged with 𝐻𝐻𝐸. 𝐻𝐻𝐸 felt a rush of surprise as she found herself in an unexpected situation. She tried to regain control, but the playful teasing from Uraraka was overwhelming her. In a moment of distraction, Uraraka took advantage and playfully encouraged 𝐻𝐻𝐸 to join in on the fun, leaving the frog girl feeling flustered and unsure. 𝐻𝐻𝐸 couldn't help but be taken aback by the turn of events, wondering how they had ended up here. 𝐻𝐻𝐸 felt a mix of confusion and amusement as Uraraka playfully teased her. The gravity girl was relentless, sliding her fingers in and out, occasionally catching 𝐻𝐻𝐸 off guard. The frog girl focused on maintaining her composure, trying not to react too strongly to her friend's antics, but the playful teasing was driving her to the edge of her patience. Even though Uraraka was doing this to her, 𝐻𝐻𝐸 still saw her as a friend. She didn't understand the brunette's reasoning, but she was sure that Uraraka wouldn't harm her. As much as she hated to admit it, deep down she was kind of enjoying it. 𝐻𝐻𝐸 had never really thought about this kind of thing, but it felt good in a way, though she couldn't fully accept it. It wasn't right, but 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 was doing it. She had been like this with Midoriya for some time now. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 pondered whether she should really be mad at him. Her thoughts were interrupted when she felt something different. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 was opening her legs and reaching a little deeper. This time she couldn't hold back her gasps, feeling her legs shake slightly as the brunette continued her movements. 𝐼𝐽 was about to reach her limit when 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 suddenly stopped, earning a confused and slightly expectant look from her. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 got up from the breathing and sweating frog girl and slowly let her float again, a huge blush adorning her face and her big eyes slightly unfocused. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 walked to the next rope, the one holding 𝐒𝐻𝐽. The invisible girl immediately started shaking, trying to break free and pleading for her to stop what she was doing. As she pulled the rope down, 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 stared at the space where 𝐒𝐻𝐽's face should be, a thought beginning to form in her mind. She sat on top of 𝐒𝐻𝐽's belly and kept looking at the invisible girl until she decided to say something. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 teased 𝐒𝐻𝐽 about her eagerness, wondering what kind of cute face she would make. 𝐒𝐻𝐽 protested, trying to maintain her composure, but 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 continued to playfully taunt her. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 lifted 𝐒𝐻𝐽's shirt, making the girl gasp in surprise. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 looked intensely at her face, imagining how adorable she would look blushing. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 then asked 𝐒𝐻𝐽 if she disliked what she was feeling, to which 𝐒𝐻𝐽 hesitated before admitting that she didn't hate it. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 stopped, letting the short-breathing girl float up again, reminding her that it didn't hurt to admit the truth. Next was 𝗟𝗀, who had a cold stare directed at the brunette. As 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 pulled her down, their gazes locked, and 𝗟𝗀's expression intensified. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 playfully warned 𝗟𝗀 about her serious face, but 𝗟𝗀 remained defiant, claiming she didn't care. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 decided to challenge her further, sitting on her back and reaching inside her shorts. 𝗟𝗀 covered her mouth, surprised by the intensity of the situation. Despite her efforts to remain silent, she felt a strange heat building inside her. Just as 𝗟𝗀 was about to let out a scream, 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 stopped, giving her a playful slap on the back as 𝗟𝗀 floated up again. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 remarked that sometimes all they needed was a stronger push. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 then approached the last rope, the one holding Yaoyorozu, who had kept her eyes closed the entire time. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 encouraged her not to be timid, but when Yaoyorozu opened her eyes, she looked straight at 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 with an intimidating expression. Yaoyorozu declared that 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 wouldn't convince her otherwise. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 sighed, admitting that Yaoyorozu had always been her biggest worry since she realized she liked Midoriya. She expressed her fears about not being good enough compared to other girls, especially Yaoyorozu, who she considered gorgeous, smart, and talented. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 shared her feelings about wanting to be more like Yaoyorozu, revealing her insecurities about competition. As she hugged Yaoyorozu, 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 confessed how much she loved Midoriya, recounting a moment when he told her she was appealing just as she was. Yaoyorozu acknowledged the sentiment but reminded 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 that what they were doing was wrong. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 admitted she knew it was wrong but couldn't help feeling good. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 sat on Yaoyorozu's back, running her hands over her arms and torso, expressing her wish for Yaoyorozu to find someone like Midoriya one day. Yaoyorozu hesitated, questioning whether she wanted to be like Midoriya. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 pointed out that he missed them, noting how they had been mean to him lately. Yaoyorozu reflected on their behavior, acknowledging that they had gone a bit too far. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 insisted that they would never understand her feelings unless they experienced it for themselves, revealing her intention to show them her point. Yaoyorozu felt a rush of emotions as she tried to process the situation. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 had come close to her, whispering something that made her heart race. The warmth radiating from 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 was overwhelming, and Yaoyorozu found herself caught in a whirlwind of conflicting feelings. She was aware of the tension building between them, and it left her feeling both exhilarated and confused. In her mind, Yaoyorozu began to picture Midoriya, imagining him in a way she never had before. She wondered what it would be like if he were the one beside her, sharing an NTMT moment. The thought sent a shiver down her spine, and she couldn't help but feel a mix of curiosity and guilt. Just then, Midoriya arrived at Ground Gamma, having received a message from 𝗟𝐼𝐝𝐬. He was puzzled by the scene before him. 4 of his classmates were suspended in the air, looking bewildered, while 𝗟𝗏𝐽 seemed to be in control of the situation. Midoriya's mind raced as he tried to make sense of it all. 𝗟𝐼𝐜, with a playful smile, explained that she was merely showing the girls a different perspective, one that involved him and her as a couple. Midoriya was taken aback, unsure of how to respond. He felt a sense of responsibility for his friend's feelings and knew that this wasn't the right way to go about things. As they discussed the situation, 𝗟𝐼𝐜's enthusiasm clashed with Midoriya's concern for their classmates' privacy. He knew they should respect their boundaries, but 𝗟𝐼𝐜's excitement was infectious. They both realized they needed to untie the girls, but the atmosphere was charged with an undeniable tension. 𝗟𝐼𝐜 stood up, and Yaoyorozu, still in shock, felt her cheeks flush as Midoriya's gaze fell upon her. The embarrassment was palpable, and the girls exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. 𝗟𝐼𝐜, undeterred, approached Midoriya and wrapped her arms around him, pulling him into a kiss. Midoriya hesitated at first, but soon melted into the moment, forgetting the awkwardness around them. 𝗟𝐼𝐜 playfully suggested that their audience wouldn't mind, but Midoriya was still hesitant. He felt the weight of the situation, knowing that it wasn't the right time or place for such displays of affection. Yet, 𝗟𝐼𝐜's charm was hard to resist, and he found himself caught up in the moment. As the kiss deepened, the tension in the room shifted. The girls watched, their hearts racing as they witnessed the connection between 𝗟𝐼𝐜 and Midoriya. It was a moment filled with unspoken emotions, and they couldn't help but feel a mix of admiration and longing. In that small warehouse, amidst the confusion and unexpected revelations, friendships would be tested, and new feelings would emerge, forever changing the dynamics of their group. No matter how much he tried to resist, he could not control his actions when she was like that, so alluring and captivating that the rational part of him just shut down. The upside-down girls were now watching the couple as some pieces of clothing were tossed aside. 𝗟𝐼𝐜 moved between Midoriya's legs, teasingly engaging with him while sliding her fingers in and out. Ignoring the sounds coming from them proved to be a difficult task, if not impossible. The heat building between them was palpable, their breathing becoming heavier and their faces flushed. The girls were captivated by the couple in front of them, wondering if 𝗟𝐼𝐜 was truly enjoying it that much. Once the thought crossed their minds, they quickly dismissed it, but the warmth inside them continued to grow. 𝗟𝐼𝐜 was fully committed, making sure to glance at her friends with sultry eyes, as if to say they were missing out. Midoriya was also caught up in the moment. Though he tried to hold back his reactions, 𝗟𝐼𝐜's skill was undeniable, drawing out soft sounds from him that caught the attention of the spectators. The atmosphere was charged with excitement. As 𝗟𝐼𝐜 encouraged him to let go, she took him fully into her mouth, and Midoriya gently guided her head, their movements becoming more intense. After a moment, he reached his peak, and she playfully let some spill out, turning to her friends with a mischievous smile, her tongue teasingly sticking out. The sight sent shivers through the girls, mixing feelings of shock and intrigue, but they remained entranced, feeling the heat rise even more. 𝗟𝐼𝐜 seemed to revel in the mix of emotions on her friends' faces, but she wasn't finished yet. With a simple hold of Midoriya's hand, she signaled what would happen next, and he was quick to comply. She laid back, allowing her friends an almost full view of her, with Midoriya's back shielding her at first. He began to explore her, drawing out nows from her as she called out for him. Midoriya lowered himself, and without hesitation, he began to please her, earning more sounds of delight from 𝗟𝐼𝐜. She was losing herself in the moment, breathing heavily and trembling slightly. At one point, she bit her thumb and looked at the upside-down girls, her expression filled with playful taunting. The girls felt the tension rise, teetering on the edge of crossing a line they weren't sure they wanted to cross. Each of them was grappling with their own feelings, whether it was Ishido trying to contain her excitement, 𝐒𝐮𝐽 hiding her embarrassment, Azui feeling her heart race, Jiro sweating from the heat, or Yaoyorozu aching to break free from the tension. In that moment, they all shared a fleeting thought. They wished to be in 𝗟𝐼𝐜's place. Speaking of her, 𝗟𝐼𝐜 suddenly pulled Midoriya closer, her body responding to the overwhelming pleasure. With a loud cry of bliss, she surrendered to the moment, her eyes unfocused as she arched her back. Afterward, she released him, gasping for air while he continued to savor the moment. A minute later, the couple stood up, trying to clean up the remnants of their encounter. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 always carried a small towel for such occasions, and they used it to tidy up. They then approached the group of friends, who were now silent. Midoriya carefully untied the ropes, and 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 released her gravity effect, allowing her friends to touch the ground normally. As they untied their hands, they acted as if nothing had happened, unsure of how to react. An awkward silence enveloped them, and no one knew how to break it. 𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐸 considered running away, 𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐸 wished to disappear, 𝐼𝐻𝐸 felt exposed, 𝐿𝐺𝐸 stood stiff as a statue, and 𝐼𝐻𝐸's mind was blank. Finally, 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 decided to speak up, breaking the silence. She acknowledged the situation, hoping her point had been made clear, and asked if they were all good now. The response was a series of small nods, except for 𝐼𝐻𝐸, who was still somewhat dazed. Midoriya sensed the tension and suggested they should head back, noting it was late and someone might be worried. With that, 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 took Midoriya's hand, and they walked away from the group, leaving the four girls standing in the warehouse. In the following days, things felt strange for Midoriya. After the discussion among the girls, none of them, aside from 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬, dared to meet his gaze. Even the mere mention of his name was enough to fluster them, prompting them to change the subject or flee the scene. Class duties were becoming increasingly challenging for Midoriya. Whenever he was paired with one of the girls, they either rushed to complete everything themselves or left all the work for him, with the latter happening more often. He understood the reasons behind their behavior, having accepted that these reactions were expected after everything that had transpired. What truly troubled him was the dynamic between 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 and the other girls. While they avoided contact with Midoriya, their fear of 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 was palpable. It was as if she were a harbinger of doom whenever she entered the room. Midoriya had inquired about what had happened before he arrived, and 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 had quickly explained how she had given them a taste of what she called Izuku magic. The details had been overwhelming, making it hard for him to focus. She reassured him that it wouldn't traumatize them, reminding him that they had faced much worse situations during villain attacks. She even suggested that the only way to truly frighten them would be if Midoriya himself had crossed a line. Midoriya was left wondering what 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 meant by crossing a line. The girls' reactions could stem from the shock of witnessing 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬's other side. Even he had been taken aback, but their anger seemed to have dissipated, replaced by a strong yet harmless rejection. They would freeze in place whenever 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 entered the classroom or the common room at the dorms. She had also stopped being invited to the study group, which led her to rely on her supportive boyfriend, though it was difficult for her to concentrate on tasks sometimes. Surprisingly, 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 didn't seem to notice the shift. Aside from the study group, things remained unchanged. 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 maintained her bright and cheerful demeanor, and they still interacted with her during class. However, there was an underlying hesitation in their smiles, as if they were forcing normalcy. This worried Midoriya. He could endure the cold treatment directed at him, but he wanted 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬 to be comfortable with her friends, especially if he was the cause of their issues. After much contemplation, he resolved to speak to each of the girls individually, even if it meant facing some backlash. As he looked around the common room, he spotted 𝐼𝐻𝐸𝐬 sitting alone on the couch, engrossed in a show. This presented an opportunity for him to approach her. However, he needed a way to address the unspoken tension between her and 𝗟𝐼𝐜𝐬. He considered how to create an opening for the conversation. He noted that 𝐼𝐻𝐸𝐬 was studying in her room, 𝐼𝐻𝐸 was at the pool, and 𝐼𝐻𝐸 was at the gym. With 𝐼𝐻𝐸𝐬 alone, he needed to ensure there were others around to encourage her to engage rather than flee. It was a bit cruel, but he felt it was necessary. Just then, Kirishima, Tokoyami, Kaminari, and Sero entered through the main door, chatting casually. This was Midoriya's chance. He approached 𝐼𝐻𝐸𝐬 and gently tapped her shoulder, causing her to turn around in surprise. Midoriya greeted her, trying to sound casual. He asked if she was busy and mentioned needing help with a new training idea. 𝐼𝐻𝐸𝐬 hesitated, unsure of how to respond, but Midoriya's earnestness and the presence of their friends made her feel compelled to consider his request. After some back and forth, she finally asked what kind of training he had in mind. They soon found themselves at one of 𝗂𝐻𝐸𝐻's dojos, using a judo mat for their session. Midoriya focused on his stretches, mentally preparing to execute his plan. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 stood nearby, shifting nervously as she wondered why he needed her assistance. If her friends had been present, she would have declined, but there was something about 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻's determination that made her hesitate. Once he finished stretching, 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻 donned a blndfld, explaining that he wanted to train his combat skills by focusing on reaction time and awareness of his surroundings. He noted that while others might be better suited for combat training, she excelled in stealth, and he wanted to respect her comfort. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 was taken aback by his compliment and consideration. After the earlier events, she had assumed 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻 was merely a shy guy hiding behind a bold facade, but now she saw a different side of him. As he took a defensive stance, he invited her to strike him from any direction. With a mix of uncertainty and determination, 𝐒𝐻𝐻 began to circle him, weighing her options. In a moment of resolve, she delivered a swift kick to his side, catching him off guard. He felt the kick and stepped to his left, quickly recovering and turning around to where he thought 𝐒𝐻𝐻 was. He completely missed her as she was behind him again, delivering a solid knock to his head. He attempted to backhand her but missed by a considerable distance. Watching midoriya Izuku struggle against her felt oddly satisfying for 𝐒𝐻𝐻. She didn't want to be mean to him, but her frustration had been building, especially due to the teasing surrounding 𝗟𝗏 and her relationship with midoriya. She found herself thinking about the scene she witnessed the other night, which had happened many times before, and it troubled her. Why did the closeness between midoriya and 𝗟𝗏 affect her so deeply? As she pondered this, the feeling intensified. Initially, she couldn't identify it, but now it was clear that it bothered her. Perhaps this was an opportunity to release some of that pent-up frustration. Midoriya was fine with taking a few hits, and she knew she couldn't hit too hard. Besides, he seemed almost indestructible, so why not let loose? Embracing the moment, 𝐒𝐻𝐻 began to strike the green-haired teen with increasing strength and speed, delivering punches and kicks one after another while circling him to prevent him from blocking. She knocked him to the ground with low sweeps and then targeted his face as he got back up. Whenever he tried to counter, he missed by a wide margin, only to receive a swift chop on his back or a knee to the stomach. At one point, she even grabbed him by the arm and tossed him over her shoulder, sending him to the tatami and momentarily knocking the breath out of him. She felt exhilarated, both from the exercise and from releasing her frustrations. Yet, a lingering sense of frustration remained. No matter how many times she brought him down or struck him, midoriya kept getting back up, as if he were a machine rather than a human. Either she was too weak, or he was incredibly resilient, most likely the latter. To make matters worse, he was starting to adapt to her attacks. It took him some time to adjust, but midoriya began using his other senses more effectively, especially his hearing. He could detect 𝐒𝐻𝐻's light footsteps, her slightly lewd breathing, and even anticipate when she would strike. All the training had paid off. He could sense the desperation in her attacks, as if she felt the need to take him down for good. This urgency only grew as he managed to dodge and block some of her strikes. At one point, she was making enough noise to be easily detectable, or perhaps he had simply become adept at fighting without sight. Regardless, she attacked him with relentless determination, throwing punch after punch, trying to make him hit the ground. Why was she so angry? Angry? That was a new feeling. He had touched her during hero training, and he had been getting close with 𝗟𝗏, which might have affected her friend. Reflecting on the hero training incident, it had been an accident. After all, he was fighting, and she was an invisible girl, so it was understandable. As for him and 𝗟𝗏, the girl seemed happier than ever, especially when they were together. Even in class, 𝗟𝗏 radiated joy. So who was 𝐒𝐻𝐻 to come between them? Sure, the two lovebirds could learn a thing or two about relationships, but they were happy, both of them. Should she really be upset with midoriya? Why did she feel this way about him? The frustration continued to build. She wondered why it wouldn't go away. She struck again, delivering a knee to his stomach, and he barely flinched. The feeling was overwhelming, and she couldn't shake it off. When she tried to punch him in the face, he dodged at the last second, managing to grab her arm and gently toss her to the floor. She barely felt the impact but lay there staring at the ceiling for a moment. It had taken Midoriya 30 minutes of blindfolded sparring to hone his senses and take her down. There was no denying he was an impressive person. Only when he called her name did she snap out of her thoughts. If something was bothering her about him and 𝗟𝗟𝐼𝐿, he urged her to speak up. They couldn't address it if she didn't say anything. She hesitated, finally admitting that it wasn't about them but rather about him alone that troubled her. Sitting up, she looked at the still blindfolded teen, even though he wouldn't see the pout forming on her face. Then she punched him in the face, causing him to sit up as well, and while he held his aching nose, she tackled him to the ground, pinning his arms and legs while hovering above him. He questioned her, but she insisted he shouldn't talk, fearing that if he did, her anger would dissipate. He expressed his longing for her not to be angry at him, but she acknowledged her mixed feelings. She should be furious with him, yet she wasn't entirely sure why. He asked if she had a second quirk of hypnosis, but she dismissed the idea, stating she would know if she had one. She felt guilty for bringing up his quirk, knowing it was a sensitive topic. To be honest, he admitted that he hadn't really wanted to train. It was merely an excuse to spend time with her, just the two of them. This revelation surprised her. He had made himself her punching bag just to help her work through her anger. A strange way of sorting things out, but the entire situation was also very unusual, so perhaps it was worth it. It was clear to Midoriya that what he had done was not a proper way to seek forgiveness. He felt a mix of confusion and regret. He was determined to make things right, especially between 𝗟𝗟𝐼𝐿 and 𝐻𝐵H. He understood that something was off between the two girls, and he wanted to restore their friendship. 𝗻𝐵H, however, had her own thoughts. She told him that he could do nothing to earn her forgiveness. The best course of action was to remain silent and still. She explained that what he had done had made her feel uncomfortable, and she wanted him to experience a similar feeling. As she moved closer, she made her intentions clear. Midoriya felt a rush of emotions, knowing that he was caught in a situation that was spiraling out of control. He was conflicted, feeling guilty for betraying 𝗟𝗟𝐿 while also wanting to mend things between the girls. 𝗻𝐵H's actions were unexpected, and Midoriya was taken aback. He felt a mix of nervousness and uncertainty. She seemed to be struggling with her own feelings, and he could sense her hesitation. Despite the awkwardness, he felt a connection to her, but he also knew he needed to be careful. He tried to communicate his discomfort, but she insisted on continuing, caught up in the moment. Midoriya found himself lost in thought, trying to process what was happening. He understood that this was not the way to resolve their issues, yet he felt drawn to the situation. 𝗻𝐵H, meanwhile, was grappling with her own emotions. She was surprised by her feelings and the way Midoriya reacted. She found herself enjoying the moment more than she had anticipated, but she was also confused about what it all meant. As they navigated this complicated situation, both characters were left to confront their feelings and the consequences of their actions, hoping to find a way back to normalcy. Maybe it was after 𝗟𝗟𝐿 had shown her how it felt, how it looked. She hated to admit it, but she felt exhilarated being close to Midoriya. The heat of the moment led her to use her free hand for her own pleasure, momentarily forgetting about her initial intentions. Deep down, she realized that her feelings for him were more than just revenge. She genuinely liked him. The thought of Midoriya being with 𝗟𝗟𝐿 made her feel sad, and she couldn't shake the jealousy that bubbled up inside her. As she reflected on her feelings, she couldn't help but imagine what it would be like for Midoriya to be with her, just as he had been with 𝗟𝗟𝐿. She tried to picture someone else, anyone from her class or even popular heroes, but none of them compared to him. Her emotions were clear now. She wanted Midoriya, and what she felt for him was love. Accepting this made everything clearer and easier to handle. In a moment of intensity, she felt him nearing his limit, and she pushed herself to give him everything she had. The rush of the moment surprised her, and she found herself overwhelmed. Midoriya, breathing and disoriented, managed to remove his 𝗶𝐿D and looked down to see her. She was wiping her face, and he could see her playful nature shining through. After a brief silence, he broke the tension by asking if she was done. She confirmed that she was, but the conversation quickly turned serious as they navigated their feelings for each other. Midoriya was hesitant, unsure of what this meant for them, especially with 𝗟𝗏𝐼 in the picture. She reassured him that everything was fine between them, but she admitted to feeling a bit afraid of how things could get complicated. As they talked, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 revealed her feelings for him, saying that she loved him and that he made her feel excited. Midoriya was taken aback, struggling to process her confession. She playfully insisted that she was serious and that she wasn't going to back down easily. With a mischievous smile, she got up and headed toward the gym's door, but Midoriya called out to her, pointing out a mark on her leggings. She thanked him with a light-hearted joke as she left, still unaware of the implications of her invisibility. As she exited, Midoriya looked up at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. He realized that 𝐒𝐮𝐬 and 𝗟𝗏𝐼 were on good terms, despite the teasing. However, he now faced a new dilemma, a love triangle with two girls who seemed to be drawn to him. It felt like something out of a cliché school anime. Meanwhile, in the UA Heights Alliance dorms, Izuku lay awake, her eyes wide and dark circles under them. She hadn't been sleeping well, and the reason was clear, Midoriya. Since the night 𝗟𝗏𝐼 had used her quirk to keep her and their friends from escaping, Izuku had struggled to find rest. It wasn't just the incident that troubled her, but the transformation she witnessed in 𝗟𝗏𝐼, who had acted in a way that left everyone feeling unsettled. And the worst part was that she couldn't avert her eyes from it. It made her feel sick, perhaps because she was upside down and experiencing zero gravity. Regardless, the image lingered in her mind, haunting her during classes, hero training, her free time, and worst of all, her dreams. It plagued her thoughts and deprived her of rest, affecting her life as a whole. 𝗟𝗏𝐼 was a constant reminder of those memories, and whenever her friend entered the same room, a chill ran down her spine. Izuku felt as if she would let out a strange sound if she ever dared to speak. And Midoriya, oh Midoriya. If she had been giving him the cold shoulder before, now Todoroki would be impressed. She was avoiding him like the devil avoids the cross, sometimes even causing problems, like during a rescue mission in hero training when she left Midoriya to fend for himself. With the lack of proper sleep, she became extremely tired and somewhat grumpy, responding too bluntly to others. It was hard to focus in class, and Izuku didn't feel like hanging out with her friends as she used to. This raised suspicions, and some classmates approached her to ask if everything was all right. She assured them that everything was fine, attributing her mood to a few bad nights of sleep, which was half true but also half a lie. She really disliked telling lies, especially to her friends. Izuku had been like this for almost a week, feeling distanced from her friends. To make matters worse, her last test had been a complete failure. She needed to do something about this, something about him. Speaking of him, Midoriya was also contemplating how to approach his amphibious friend. He sat on the couch in the common room, lost in thought. It was already 9 p.m., and he still had no idea how to proceed. By now, the rest of Class 1A had learned to ignore his mutterings. Only when he stood there for more than 10 minutes would they interrupt his train of thought. Just as he barely formed an idea, he felt a hand rest on his shoulder. Looking up, he saw the familiar and visibly annoyed face of Izuku. She locked eyes with him for a moment before speaking. "Cool. 10 minutes, she said. Confused, he asked what she meant, but she left before he could question her further, leaving him alone with his thoughts as he wondered what awaited him at the pool. Izuku was usually open about her opinions, but when it came to her feelings, he found her difficult to read. The only time he was sure of her emotions was during that special class when she had been quite upset. He quietly left the dorms and made his way to the pool at the right time. As he waited, gazing at the night sky, he soon heard footsteps approaching. Izuku appeared and he started to speak, but she interrupted him. "You can stop that apology right there. It won't make things any better." He tried to explain, but she cut him off, expressing her longing to make something clear. She moved closer, her eyes locked onto his, her gaze intense. He could feel her warm breath on his face, which only added to the blush creeping onto his cheeks. Midoriya was a bundle of nerves. She stood there, unwavering, and to calm himself, he focused on the sweet scent of vanilla in the air, likely from her shampoo. Her hair was slightly damp, suggesting she had just come from the shower, and he had to push away any distracting thoughts. After what felt like an eternity, She made her next move. Her hands fell on his shoulders, holding him firmly in place. She closed her eyes and pulled him closer. Midoriya barely registered what was happening before she leaned in, and he felt the warmth of her presence. 𝐼𝐬 held him close, and he could hardly breathe as she maintained her grip. Breaking the moment, she watched him as he gasped for air, a deep blush on his face. 𝐼𝐬, what was that? He managed to ask. She reiterated that she wanted to make things clear. She confessed her feelings for him, admitting that even though she hated it, she liked him. This revelation surprised him, and she explained that it frustrated her to see 𝗟𝗏 dating him. She had tried to resist her feelings but could no longer deny them. Midoriya was taken aback by her honesty and the complexity of her emotions. She urged him to call her Tsu and continued to express how he made her feel. The conversation took a turn, and she revealed that her thoughts had been consumed by him, leaving her restless at night. Midoriya was stunned, unsure of how to respond. 𝐼𝐬's feelings were clear, and he realized that this was a moment that could change everything between them. Midoriya found himself in a situation he never anticipated. Tsu had him firmly in her grasp, her legs wrapped around his, leaving him with little room to maneuver. The closeness was overwhelming, and he felt a rush of panic as he tried to process what was happening. His thoughts raced from the betrayal he felt towards his girlfriend to the puzzling actions of Tsu, and then spiraled into a basic fear of being so close to a girl. As he struggled to comprehend the situation, he noticed something unusual. His body began to feel numb, with a tingling sensation spreading through him. He soon realized the cause when he caught a glimpse of a subtle smile on Tsu's lips. She released her hold on him but remained close, her hand lingering at his side. Her usual expression shifted to one that was still somewhat neutral but more expressive than before. Midoriya noticed a blush creeping onto her cheeks, and her eyes were slightly closed, revealing a hint of affection. "You seem to have noticed," she said playfully. Midoriya felt a wave of confusion wash over him. He could hardly move, and the realization of Tsu's intentions began to dawn on him. She explained that the toxin she secreted from her skin was not very potent but could induce a tingling and numbness when applied in the right amounts. It was easier for her to release more of it when her skin was damp. He finally connected the dots, recalling that she had taken a shower before arriving. The implications of her actions began to sink in, leaving him in a state of bewilderment. "I shouldn't be impressed right now." Tsu, with a playful rib bit, commented on how cute he looked when he got nervous. Midoriya had been hearing that a lot lately. She continued, expressing her feelings in a way that made him uneasy. He hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Tsu asked if he could help her, just like he did with 𝗟𝗏. Midoriya stammered, trying to explain that it was a different situation between them. Tsu pointed out that 𝗟𝗏 had been open about her feelings the other night, which made him even more flustered. He insisted that what he shared with Tsu was unique, but she pressed him further, suggesting that he might have had similar experiences with other girls. Midoriya's embarrassment grew as he avoided her gaze, feeling exposed. Tsu seemed to read his thoughts, which only added to his discomfort. He was relieved when she didn't mention any names, knowing that if she did, it could lead to trouble regarding his recent encounter with 𝐒𝐽. Tsu, however, was not one to shy away from bold actions. She had even used a light toxin to get his attention before. Midoriya couldn't help but wonder what other surprises his friends had in store for him. Tsu expressed her hope that he could enjoy their time together as much as she did. From his position, he watched as she playfully adjusted her clothing, leaving him feeling both embarrassed and curious about what would happen next. Looked back at him with a nervous smile on her lips and a finger on her chin. She noted that it appeared larger when she looked closer. He wished she wouldn't look at all. She encouraged him not to be shy, playfully rib-biting as she lowered herself closer to the enormous object, causing Midoriya to feel a rush of emotions. Nervous yet curious, she took a deep breath and made up her mind. The sensation was new and thrilling for both of them, unlike anything he had experienced before. Midoriya's eyes widened in surprise as he felt her exploring, moving with a gentle touch that sent shivers down his spine. Midoriya struggled to restrain himself, trying to think of anything that would help him regain control, but nothing seemed to work. The mental image of recovery girl in a swimsuit only made him feel queasy. He focused on 𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐸, reminding himself of how disappointed she would be if she knew what was happening. The thought of her sadness broke his heart. He remembered her kindness, and it only intensified his turmoil. If he could, he would have punched himself for being in this situation. Tsuyu playfully teased him, her actions making it difficult for him to think straight. Midoriya realized that the only way out of this was to engage with her game. If she wanted to play, then he would have to respond in kind. Gathering his resolve and silently apologizing to 𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐸, he decided to reciprocate Tsuyu's playful advances. When he lightly brushed his lips against her, she paused for a moment, surprised by the sensation. A shiver ran through her body, and as he continued, her reactions intensified. Her breath quickened, and if he could see her face, he would notice a bright blush spreading across her cheeks, her expression one of delight. Tsuyu quickly refocused, determined to give Midoriya an unforgettable experience. She took a deep breath and focused, feeling the rush of emotions as she engaged with him. Midoriya was struggling to maintain his composure. He thought that if he could help her reach her peak first, she might leave him alone afterward, but she was surprisingly skilled. The only thing keeping his thoughts from drifting away was the warmth of her presence, which he was savoring, trying to connect with her as deeply as possible. He hated to admit it, but he was enjoying the moment, the sweetness of their connection, and the unique sensations they were sharing. However, he was determined to stay focused on his goal. As soon as she reached her limit, he would feel a sense of relief, though he knew he would have to wait for the effects of the toxin to fade. The challenge was that he was also nearing his own limit. He wondered about the other girls and how they affected him. Whenever they initiated something, it felt overwhelming. He needed to concentrate. She expressed her feelings, revealing how special he was to her, and that she had never experienced anything like this before. She was determined to reach that peak together with him, feeling her thoughts becoming hazy as she approached her 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐸. Unbeknownst to her, he was in the same place. They both felt the tension building, and soon, she wrapped her legs around him, signaling her release. Afterward, she turned to face him, her cheeks flushed, and laid on top of him, sharing a deep kiss that tasted of their shared experience. It was new, but she found herself enjoying it immensely. After breaking the kiss, she looked at him with a warm smile, snuggling into his chest and expressing how she had never felt this way before. He was surprised by her honesty and felt a mix of emotions. She playfully mentioned how lucky another girl was to have him, but he reassured her that they spent time together in various ways, like watching movies and studying. She pointed out that they hadn't included her in their study group lately, which led to a conversation about their friendship. He urged her to remain friends with the other girl, despite the tension between them. In a light-hearted moment, she flicked his forehead, and he instinctively reacted, realizing he was regaining control. She reminded him of her feelings and the bond they shared, expressing a longing for him to take responsibility for the connection they had formed. He hesitated, unsure of how to respond, but she silenced him with a quick kiss before getting up to clean herself. She tidied up and left him to contemplate the night sky, reflecting on how he had ended up in this situation. He thought about the other girls and the challenges that lay ahead, particularly with 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐸, who he found difficult to approach. Midoriya sighed, knowing he had to clean up the remnants of their encounter. He wanted to leave no trace behind as he headed back to the dorms, feeling a mix of exhaustion and anticipation for what the future held. He was determined to find a way to connect with 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐸, but it would require careful planning. He could try to offer her some tips about her quirk, but that might raise suspicions since he had never shared his opinions and notes with anyone before. Without direct options, he could always wait for a situation where they ended up together, probably during hero training. That could interfere with the training, considering how things had gone the last time he tried, but he didn't have many other options left, and he didn't expect her to approach him like Azui did. So, he decided to wait. Fortunately, the next day, the hero training would involve a rescue mission at the USJ, and by chance, he and 𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐸 would be trapped in the landslide zone. The area they were in was nearly buried in dirt and mud, a choice made by Midoriya under the pretense of making it harder for their friends to find them. All in the name of training, right? But in reality, the location offered them privacy, and he hoped that a few minutes alone with 𝐼𝐻 would be enough to address the issue. One thing was certain, there wasn't time for any distractions, though he didn't expect her to react that way. So, here they were, waiting for the rescue team, composed of Tokoyami, Kaminari, and Ida, to save them. Learning from previous experiences, Midoriya went straight to the point before an awkward silence could settle in. He needed to talk to 𝐼𝐻 about something important. She was surprised by his sudden seriousness and asked why he was bringing it up now. He explained that he had struggled to find the right time or excuse to discuss it. Eventually, he revealed it was about Uraraka. He acknowledged that things had gotten complicated but expressed his concern that they had been acting differently around her. He asked her to maintain the status quo, emphasizing that Uraraka didn't deserve to suffer because of his mistakes. 𝐼𝐻 paused, taken aback by his earnestness as he bowed deeply before her. She felt a mix of surprise and contemplation. She hadn't intended to distance herself from Uraraka, at least not on purpose. She reflected on her behavior and realized that she had indeed been wary around the brunette, keeping her distance after discovering a side of Uraraka she hadn't expected. 𝐼𝐻 had never been particularly close to Uraraka, and even Azui, who was among her closest friends, had been caught off guard by her. Unsure of how to respond, 𝐼𝐻 looked at Midoriya, still bowed, and a small smile crept onto her lips. She knew he was not the type to harm anyone unless they were a villain. She reassured him that he didn't need to apologize, acknowledging that it was their fault for ignoring Uraraka. Midoriya straightened up, his eyes brightening with relief and a smile forming on his face. He was grateful for her understanding. 𝐼𝐻 felt compelled to apologize as well, stating that the situation between him and Uraraka didn't concern her, so she couldn't dictate what he should do. Midoriya recognized that she only wanted the best for Uraraka, and 𝐼𝐻 agreed. She found herself lost in thought, reflecting on the events of that night when Uraraka had come to them, desperate to prove that Midoriya was not a bad person and that her actions were her own. This led her to wonder why Uraraka had become so attached to him. She made a mental list of reasons, starting with the obvious. Midoriya had a kind heart, and once you got to know him, he was one of the best people you could meet. His shyness and social awkwardness could be endearing to others, and when the situation called for it, he displayed more courage than most, even compared to pro heroes, which she admired. There was something charming about his freckles and unruly curly green hair. Additionally, thanks to Uraraka's comments, she knew Midoriya was quite fit, which added to his appeal. 𝐼𝐻's mind wandered to a topic that had bothered her since entering Class 1A. Against her better judgment, she considered that maybe this green-haired boy could help her. Before she could voice her thoughts, they heard a voice from above. The hero team had found them much earlier than Midoriya had expected, which made him glad he had managed to talk with 𝐼𝐻 and sort things out. He felt relieved that there were no unexpected surprises this time. He realized that in the future he should continue to be direct, just as he had been now. The voice from above reassured them to stay calm as the heroes worked to free them. 𝐼𝐻 and Midoriya exchanged amused glances at Ida's overly professional demeanor. Midoriya imagined the scene unfolding above, with Tokoyami using dark shadow to clear the debris while Ida coordinated the rescue. Moments later, Kaminari appeared at the entrance, using his quirk to light the way. Once they were out, Ida checked on their well-being, ensuring they were calm before carrying them one by one to the designated area, completing the simulation in record time. As Ida carried Midoriya back, he noticed a different expression on his friend's face. Midoriya seemed much less stressed than he had been lately. Something happened, Midoriya. A smile formed on his face as he replied to his running friend. Not much, he felt that a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. I see. Well, it's good to hear that. Inwardly, Midoriya felt happy and relieved to know that 𝐼𝐻 had not only reconciled with Uraraka but had also forgiven him for the misunderstandings that had occurred. Soon enough, everything would return to normal, with the added joy of having a girlfriend. They could share the news with the class once the current issues were resolved. There was no point in hiding it since so many people already knew. Midoriya thought that even with the chilly treatment, the girls had been kind not to spread the word about his relationship with Uraraka, even if they hinted it was more because of her. What mattered was the intent, right? After class, 𝐼𝐻𝐸 quickly approached Midoriya, grabbing him by the sleeve of his training suit and making him turn around. Midoriya, can you meet me in my room after dinner? There's something I need to talk to you about. Sure. But does it have to be in your room? Something kind of personal. Never mind, forget I said it. Oh wait. After dinner, right? The slightly nervous girl nodded silently, confirming their meeting later. Midoriya nodded back and headed to the boys' locker room to take a shower and change clothes. The afternoon passed, and soon the moon appeared in the sky, bringing the dark colors of night and many bright stars. Midoriya stood in front of 𝐼𝐻𝐸's room door, frozen like a statue as he summoned the courage to move forward. The fact that 𝐼𝐻𝐸 had asked him to come here made him nervous. It was a girl's room, and they would be alone, which led to a sick feeling of replay in his mind. He didn't dare to think if 𝐼𝐻𝐸 had any interest in him beyond friendship and classmate status. There were enough things on his mind right now. Besides, there was no way that could happen, right? Inside the room, 𝐼𝐻𝐸 was startled by the knock on her door. After a few seconds, she heard Midoriya's voice, even though she already knew it was him. She got up from her bed, where she had been sitting since dinner ended, and rushed upstairs to brush her teeth for reasons she couldn't quite understand. After that, she waited anxiously for the green-haired boy to arrive. As time passed, she grew nervous that he might not come, but she shrugged off the feeling. After all, this was Midoriya. Before opening the door, she felt the urge to run her hands through her hair to fix any possible stray strands. Her hand shook slightly as she held the doorknob, but she steeled her nerves and put on the most normal expression she could muster as she opened it, revealing a visibly tense Midoriya. She let him in and closed the door behind her, taking a moment to glance at the corridor to check for any potential witnesses. Turning back to the nervous boy standing in the middle of her room, she noticed how he found the carpet and curtains particularly interesting. 𝐼𝐻𝐸 walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder, causing him to jump slightly, and then she made him sit beside her on the bed. An awkward silence lingered for half a minute before Midoriya attempted to start a conversation. So, 𝐼𝐻𝐸-san, you wanted to ask me something. He hoped to end the awkwardness as soon as possible. She hesitated before deciding to speak. It's more like a favor. Well, if I can be useful, I'm more than happy to help. Please don't say it. The silence stretched between them. So, does it have something to do with school or? 𝐼𝐻𝐸 stood up, interrupting him as she moved to her door and locked it. She turned back, looking Midoriya in the eyes for a moment before returning to sit beside him again, focusing on the black and white chess carpet while resting her hands on her knees. She shook away all doubt in her mind and decided to be as straightforward and honest as possible with him. Her face lifted, and her eyes locked onto his again as she took his hands, leaving Midoriya confused and flustered. Midoriya, I want to ask you something, and you have to promise to be completely honest. Okay, 𝐻𝐸-san. You also can't go back on your word after this. Midoriya, do you think I am attractive? 𝐼𝐻𝐸 stared at the green-haired teen, who had a blank expression. After what she assumed was his brain resetting, his eyes focused again, and she waited for his answer. 𝐻𝐸-san. Just to be sure, did you ask if I think you are attractive? I don't know what to say. Midoriya, just be honest with me. You promised, remember? Yes, but I cannot just answer a question like that so easily. Why not? Is it that hard to see me in that way? 𝐼𝐻𝐸 looked down, letting go of his hands, her eyes staring at the ground and bed sheets again. Upon seeing this, Midoriya's instincts kicked in, and he placed his hands on her shoulders. Acting without thinking, he wanted to help his friend with whatever problem she had. It was just his nature to help others. Now, with 𝐼𝐻𝐸 lifting her head again and looking at him with expectant eyes, he had to say something, but he couldn't afford to say anything that might hurt her. 1,000 thoughts crossed his mind in mere seconds, and in the end, he simply said what came to mind while trying to describe the girl in front of him. 𝐻𝐻𝐸-san. I think you are attractive. Really? Why? In a very unique way, but attractive without a doubt. You mean it? What do you like about me then? She asked shyly, pushing the tips of her index fingers against each other and looking away, a small blush crossing her face. She hadn't expected that answer or the contact from Midoriya at all. Well, you see, your hair. Looks good. My hair. It kind of frames your face, and your eyes are really pretty, and there are these cute red marks under them. So, well, thank you, Midoriya. That's really nice of you to say. But isn't there something else that, catches your attention? Midoriya felt a wave of surprise wash over him as he listened to Jiro's unexpected question. Just when he thought they had moved past a sensitive topic, she pulled him back in. He wondered why she would think he was a good person to ask about such things. Jiro took a moment to gather her thoughts before responding. She explained that after what had happened with 𝗟𝗏, she had become more aware of her feelings. It wasn't the first time this topic had crossed her mind, but it had become more prominent since starting at 𝗟𝗏. She expressed her frustration at feeling out of place compared to the other girls, who seemed more developed. She recalled a time when a classmate had tried to peek into the girls' locker room and how she had felt overlooked. After Midoriya had spoken to her, she thought he would be the perfect person to confide in, even if it felt silly. Midoriya, sensing her vulnerability, placed his arm around her shoulders, offering comfort. He admitted that he found it hard to discuss such topics without feeling embarrassed, but he assured her that she was appealing just as she was. She didn't need to compare herself to anyone else. A smile broke across Jiro's face as she looked at him, appreciating his kind words. Midoriya felt a sense of relief, knowing he had helped lift her spirits a little. He realized that discussions like this could hold significant meaning for girls, so he promised himself to be more attentive in the future. Suddenly, Jiro stood up in front of him, surprising Midoriya as she began to remove her shirt. And breathes. He was taken aback and exclaimed in confusion, wondering why she was undressing. Jiro responded casually, explaining that if she wasn't as developed as others, she felt she needed to show herself to him. Midoriya was bewildered and asked why she thought he should look. Jiro insisted it was so he could tell her what he found attractive about her. He hesitated, feeling uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Jiro, however, encouraged him, saying it was a big step for her to do this. As she stood there, Midoriya's heart raced. He couldn't help but notice her unique appeal, her toned body and the way her curves contrasted with her tough demeanor. Realizing he had been silent for too long, he finally spoke up, his voice shaky as he shared his thoughts, feeling increasingly flustered. Just then, he felt a sudden weight as Jiro playfully pushed him back onto the bed. When he opened his eyes, he saw her smiling down at him. Before he could say anything, she wrapped him in a warm hug, making him stiffen for a moment before he relaxed into her embrace. She seemed genuinely happy, and that made him feel good too. Then, to his astonishment, Jiro leaned in and kissed him. The surprise made his eyes widen, and she held on to him to keep him from pulling away. As she kissed him, he tried to respond, and they found themselves caught in a playful battle for 𝗟𝗏s. Jiro let out a small sound of surprise, which made Midoriya pull back, both of them breathing heavily. Jiro, a bit flustered, admitted that she had felt so happy that she couldn't hold back. Midoriya reminded her that he was with 𝗟𝗏, but Jiro had something else on her mind. She hesitated before asking if he could share the same experiences he had with 𝗟𝗏 with her. Midoriya was taken aback, unsure of how to respond. He felt a mix of confusion and concern, realizing that this conversation was leading them into uncharted territory. She made it seem like it was the best thing in the world. Midoriya hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Jiro, with a playful tone, urged him to consider her request, suggesting that he could spend time with 𝗟𝗏 anytime. She wanted him to make an exception for her, just for that night. Midoriya felt conflicted, reminding her that they were in a shared space where others could hear them. Jiro revealed that her room was soundproofed, a detail she had taken care of because of her many instruments. Still, Midoriya insisted that it wasn't right, as he had a girlfriend and believed such moments were meant for someone special. Jiro playfully countered that she liked him just as much. Midoriya was taken aback, questioning her sincerity. Jiro dismissed his concerns, explaining that teasing Kaminari was just for fun, and she was ready to move on. She leaned in closer, their faces almost touching, and asked if she could be his girlfriend, her breath warm against his skin. Before he could respond, she kissed him again. Midoriya felt trapped but was surprised by how much he was drawn to her. 𝐼𝐻𝐸 felt a rush of excitement, holding Midoriya down and enjoying the moment. She had never felt this way before, and it made her feel powerful to have him beneath her. As she skillfully maneuvered her earphones, she removed his shirt, admiring his toned physique. Midoriya shuddered at her touch, blushing as she traced her fingers across his muscles. 𝐼𝐻𝐸 felt a pang of envy for Uraraka, wishing she could have someone as loyal as him. She moved on to his breathes, revealing more of him, and her confidence grew as she explored further. With a teasing smile, she acknowledged the surprise of his reaction. Midoriya warned her to stop, insisting it wouldn't end well, but 𝐼𝐻𝐸 playfully challenged him, claiming that his body seemed to suggest otherwise. She teased him further, expressing her longing to call him by his first name, which he hesitated to allow. 𝐼𝐻𝐸 playfully insisted that she would stick with his nickname, while he continued to express his discomfort. She was determined to convince him, claiming it was her first time and that she was not interested in anyone else. Midoriya was taken aback by her boldness, but she was undeterred. As she continued to tease him, Midoriya felt overwhelmed, struggling to maintain control. 𝐼𝐻𝐸 was clearly enjoying the moment, and she was determined to push the boundaries. Midoriya warned her again, but she was excited by the challenge. 𝐼𝐻𝐸 was captivated by his reactions, and as she continued, she felt a thrill at the intimacy they were sharing. Midoriya was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, unable to fully comprehend how they had reached this point. After a moment of silence, 𝐼𝐻𝐸 crawled back on top of him, her eyes locked onto his. She playfully demanded a reward for what she had done, teasing him about how things usually went. Midoriya insisted that it wasn't how it worked, but 𝐼𝐻𝐸 was relentless, claiming he was being unfair. She removed her BR and panties, throwing them aside, and Midoriya felt a rush of confusion. He hesitated, unsure of what to do next. 𝐼𝐻𝐸 encouraged him to surprise her, and he finally suggested she turn around, a sultry look crossing her face as she considered his request. 𝐾𝐞𝐭 followed Midoriya's instructions, positioning herself on her hands and knees above him. She playfully wiggled her hips, causing him to blush even more. Her eager gaze turned back to him, anticipating a reward for her actions. Midoriya found himself in a familiar situation, reminiscent of his experiences with Hagakure and Azui. He realized he had to either act or delay the inevitable. With a deep breath, he pushed aside thoughts of Uraraka, his official girlfriend, if only for a moment. 𝐾𝐞𝐭 gasped in surprise when she felt Midoriya's hands on her, pulling her closer. A thrill coursed through her as she felt his warm breath against her. Although she had initiated this, she was uncertain of what to expect, leading to her startled reaction when he playfully teased her. Midoriya proceeded with what he knew, gently exploring and eliciting soft sounds from 𝐾𝐞𝐭. He could see her enjoying every moment, her reactions encouraging him to continue. As he skillfully used his fingers, 𝐾𝐞𝐭 squirmed, her sounds growing louder, unbothered by the noise. Midoriya wondered about the soundproofing of her room. He then shifted his attention, reaching for her, appreciating her softness. His gentle touches drew more delightful sounds from her, and he could see her losing herself in the moment. 𝐾𝐞𝐭 was overwhelmed by sensations, her body responding to him in ways she had never experienced before. A new feeling began to build within her, leaving her breathless and eager to explore this unfamiliar territory. As the intensity rose, 𝐾𝐞𝐭 instinctively pressed closer to him, losing herself in the moment. She felt a rush of emotions, her body trembling with excitement. In a wave of exhilaration, she found herself overwhelmed by her first powerful experience, collapsing against him, breathless and exhilarated. Determined, she focused on him, finding strength to lift herself and engage with him fully. She was committed to making this moment memorable, moving with determination. Midoriya felt the tension build within him, nearing his limit. 𝐾𝐞𝐭 was resolute, ready to embrace the moment fully. As they reached a peak, she experienced a rush of emotions, feeling a sense of fulfillment. She took a moment to catch her breath, her face flushed with excitement. Turning to Midoriya, she playfully expressed her joy, a thumbs up and a wide grin conveying her triumph. Afterward, she settled onto his lap, exploring his physique with her hands, admiring the results of his hard work. She felt a sense of warmth and contentment, snuggling against him, overwhelmed by the emotions swirling within her. For the first time, she felt a deep affection for this remarkable boy. Despite knowing Midoriya was committed to 𝗟𝗏, she felt a sense of satisfaction in having captured his attention, even if just for a moment. 𝐾𝐿 expressed her feelings, and Midoriya was taken aback, realizing the weight of her words. She reassured him of her sincerity, explaining how his charm had captivated her. They shared a light-hearted moment, acknowledging the unusual circumstances that had brought them together. 𝐾𝐿 laughed softly, affirming her feelings while also recognizing the complexities of their situation. She promised not to interfere with his relationship but expressed her longing to remain close to him. After some time spent in each other's embrace, 𝐾𝐿 finally released him. Midoriya quietly slipped back to his room, navigating carefully to avoid being seen. He took a cold shower to clear his mind, reflecting on the events of the night. As he lay in bed, he replayed the moments from when 𝗟𝗏 had entered his room to the present, contemplating the whirlwind of emotions he had experienced. Somewhere in that meantime, Midoriya realized he had made a significant mistake. He repeated this to himself, trying to uncover what it was while also convincing himself of it. In another part of the building, specifically in the girls' dorm, passionate dreams awaited at least 4 of them. Another night had passed, and once again, 𝗟𝗏 woke up covered in sweat, her bed sheets in disarray. It was embarrassing, and at this rate, she would need to ask her parents to send her the old acid-proof sheets she hadn't used since kindergarten. The situation called for drastic measures. It was bad enough that she had reverted to the old habit of sleeping without clothes, and she certainly didn't want to buy a new set of sheets every time she dreamed about the boy. She wished she could stop dreaming about him altogether, but there was something about him that made her wonder how strong his body felt to the touch. If only he could use all that strength with her. Midoriya was present in the classroom, but his mind was far away, earning him not 1 but 3 warnings from Aizawa and at least 7 inquiries about his well-being from his classmates. He simply apologized to his teacher and waved away their concerns, but his thoughts kept racing around his current situation. He had 𝗟𝗏 as his girlfriend, yet Hagakure, Azui, and Jiro had all confessed their feelings for him in the most unexpected ways. Wait a moment, 𝗟𝗏 had confessed in a similar manner too. What had Midoriya done to deserve this much attention? Sure, they all agreed he was cute, likely due to his shy nature, but that couldn't be enough to drive them all crazy over him like this. His workouts seemed to be paying off, making his body capable of handling one for all. He was sure he fit the definition of ripped, but it still didn't seem like a sufficient reason for 4 girls to be falling for him. Not that he minded, he was genuinely happy that 𝗟𝗏 felt the same way about him. It was just unsettling that, in such a short time, the girls around him were coming after him one by one, eager to satisfy their feelings. Why him? He knew his friends had many attractive traits as well. Instead of denying that a group of girls had feelings for him, Midoriya decided to focus on something more important, and no, it wasn't the class going on. The next item on his list of things to explain was 𝗟𝗏 Mina. This time, he would plan far enough ahead to predict her choice between spaghetti or chicken for lunch. There would be no room for errors. He was determined to avoid any more chaos surrounding him. He felt optimistic this time. All the girls seemed to be understanding and forgiving, and there had to be a limit to how many would be eager to pursue him. If only he knew. Suddenly, someone placed a hand on his shoulder and shook him gently, bringing him back to reality. He glanced at the clock and realized it was already time for hero training. He had been so lost in thought that he had missed the entire class. Hopefully, he could catch up with Iida or 𝗟𝗏. But Iida was a safer bet if he wanted to get notes without distractions. The one who had woken him from his trance was none other than 𝗟𝗏. She wore a worried expression, and looking around, he noticed they were the only 2 left in the classroom, meaning she had waited for him to leave. Shaking his head slightly, he put on a smile and stood up from his seat. 𝗟𝗏 asked if he was all right, noting that he had completely zoned out. He replied that he was fine, just lost in thought. She understood, mentioning that the last math question had almost made her brain freeze. He agreed, even though he had no idea what she was talking about. They decided to head to the locker rooms, and Midoriya took the opportunity to engage 𝐒𝐮𝐲 in conversation, testing the waters of their interaction. He asked her why she had been in class alone, noting that she usually accompanied 𝐒𝐮𝐲 and 𝐒𝐮𝐲. She explained that she had forgotten something and came back, only to find him still there. He thanked her for waiting. At least she was being friendly. He wondered if she could maintain a cold demeanor for long, given her naturally friendly nature. There seemed to be no one she didn't at least become friends with. Then came the hero training class. Today's mission was a race with obstacles to save a victim. The victim was none other than Midnight, and 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐼 would create a constantly changing course with his quirk, forcing the students to adapt quickly. They were split into 5 teams of 4. The results placed Ida, 𝐼𝐻, Bakugo, Midoriya, and 𝐒𝐮𝐲 as the top 5 in that order. Aizawa dismissed them, and Midoriya headed to the dorms and straight to his room, where he spent the rest of the afternoon contemplating his approach to 𝐒𝐮𝐲. He reviewed every detail and possible outcome repeatedly, searching for any flaws to perfect his plan. He was so focused that he ended up skipping his daily workouts, which his cell phone reminded him of with an alarm. Not feeling hungry at all, he decided to use the gym since he had no homework today. As he passed through the common room, he grabbed an apple from a bowl on one of the tables and headed to the gym with a towel over his shoulder. He felt proud of the work he had done under 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐼's coaching at the beach. The place had been a mess before, and he had managed to clean it up practically by himself. However, he couldn't deny that using the facilities at 𝐼𝐻𝐼 was an incredible experience. The gym was filled with various equipment, allowing him to spend the entire day there without repeating any exercise, not to mention the specialized equipment designed for the most diverse quirks. Last time he checked, they were installing a new wall treadmill designed to accommodate quirks. Midoriya began his usual training routine, starting with the basics, push-ups and jumping jacks to warm up, followed by leg exercises, particularly squats. He then focused on his midsection, performing sit-ups and abdominal crunches while hanging from a bar. Next came his chest and arms, the areas he concentrated on most due to his combat style. Midoriya executed numerous push-ups, sometimes even managing to lift his body vertically. His bench press sessions involved weights that seemed quite heavy for his size, and even the weights he used for bicep curls appeared disproportionate for a teenager. What was most impressive was that Midoriya moved with precision, ensuring he avoided injury while maximizing his workout. Even his rest PRDS were carefully timed. After 2 solid hours at the gym, he concluded his training and headed to the locker room, finishing off the water bottle he had brought along. Midoriya always felt a sense of pride after working out. The burning sensation in his muscles and his heavy breathing were clear indicators of his effort. Day by day, he felt he was gaining better control over his quirk. Bit by bit, he aimed to master the full extent of the power bestowed upon him, aspiring to become the best hero in the world, just like his idol and mentor. The thought made him smile. If someone had told him a year ago that he would be chosen by 𝐼𝐻𝐼 as his successor, he would have thought it was a cruel joke, even though it was his dream. He understood that he had a long journey ahead, but rather than discouraging him, it fueled his determination to keep pushing his limits. He reflected on how much his life had changed, especially with the many friends he could rely on. Most importantly, there was someone special who felt the same way about him. The thought of 𝐼𝐻𝐼 reminded him of a plan he had been formulating. By his estimates, he would be ready to act in 2 days at most. He needed to ensure everything went as planned, reviewing it again while the cold water refreshed his body. He then turned on the hot water, not wanting to catch a chill. The warmth washed away his fatigue, allowing him a moment of respite from worrying about the 3 girls interested in him or the 2 he still needed to talk to. Midoriya even considered letting things resolve themselves, but he knew that could take longer than he anticipated. He sighed, contemplating whether he should approach her directly. Suddenly, the lights in the locker room went out, startling him. He turned off the hot water and called out, hoping someone was nearby. He wrapped a towel around his waist and made his way to the light switches, navigating through the fog created by the hot water. As he reached the wall where the switches were, he felt something unusual. They seemed distorted and stuck together, preventing him from pressing them. He called out again, trying to lighten the mood, but when he received no response, he let out a frustrated sigh and reached for the doorknob, only to discover it was missing. Upon closer inspection, he realized it appeared to have melted away. This made him think of Todoroki, but it wasn't like him to play pranks. Perhaps Kaminari was responsible, but if he were, he would have been short-circuited by now. A faint noise caught Midoriya's attention, putting him on high alert. Could it be a villain? He cautiously moved through the lockers, sharpening his senses as he navigated through the mist. Then he heard faint, wet footsteps. The atmosphere began to overwhelm him, clouding his judgment. It couldn't be a villain, he reassured himself, but if not, who or what was lurking nearby? A shadow flickered in the corner of his vision, causing him to freeze. He held his breath to suppress a small gasp, and when the footsteps drew closer, he quickly ducked into one of the lockers, peering through the small slits as the shadow passed by. He stifled a scream as his heart raced when the shadow stopped right in front of his hiding place. He pressed himself against the back of the locker, holding his breath. After what felt like an eternity, the shadow moved away, allowing him to exhale quietly. Not hearing any sounds, Midoriya decided to kick the door open and report the incident to the school staff later. He walked toward the bench where he had left his change of clothes, but something felt off. He looked up slowly, cautious that any sudden movement might provoke whatever was in front of him. Then, nothing. Midoriya sighed again, but then he noticed a pair of golden orbs glowing behind him. A brief flash of light illuminated the area. His heart raced as he jumped forward, nearly activating full cowl and hitting his head on the ceiling. He looked around with wide eyes and a hand on his chest, his breathing unsteady and ragged. That's when he saw what he thought was the shadow from before, illuminated by the light of the smartphone it was holding. Ishido, of all people, stood there, looking at Midoriya with a face devoid of emotions and pointing her phone towards him. It took Midoriya 3 clicking sounds to realize that Ishido was taking pictures, and some more time to react properly and cover his already red face. He stammered, surprised to see her. Ishido seemed unfazed by his embarrassment as she examined her phone, seemingly ignoring the flustered boy in front of her. She greeted him with a playful wave, her smile mischievous in the dim light. Midoriya tried to calm down while he inquired about her presence. She casually mentioned that she had sneaked out of the dorms when no one was looking, and when he pressed for more details, she revealed that she came there for him. Midoriya felt a mix of confusion and concern as he noticed the melted light switches and doorknob, realizing she had used her quirk on them. As Ishido approached him, Midoriya instinctively backed away until he was pressed against the wall of the showers. She leaned closer, their breaths mingling in the air. Her playful tone hinted at something more, and Midoriya felt his heart race. When she mentioned that she had let a small drop of acid on the cables, he was taken aback. She explained that it would soon melt, causing the emergency lights to turn on. Midoriya was caught off guard by her boldness as she explored his physique, commenting on his hard-earned muscles. Suddenly, the emergency lights flickered on, illuminating Ishido's figure. Midoriya noticed her clothes looked ragged, as if they had been damaged. He felt her intense gaze on him, and he was unsure how to react. Curiosity got the better of him, and he asked about her torn clothes. She playfully hinted that it had something to do with her quirk, and when he guessed correctly, she teased him further. As she leaned in and kissed him, Midoriya was startled, though part of him had anticipated this moment. Her hands roamed over his body, and she expressed her admiration for him, making him feel both flattered and overwhelmed. She continued to tease him about her dreams, revealing that he often appeared in them, and he couldn't help but feel a mix of embarrassment and intrigue. Despite his protests about being Uraraka's boyfriend, Ishido remained persistent, playfully dismissing his concerns. Midoriya felt a rush of emotions as Ishido's playful demeanor challenged his resolve, leaving him in a whirlwind of confusion and excitement. She pressed her body against his, making it difficult for Midoriya to move without brushing against her. He could feel his heart racing as her presence enveloped him. His eyes were closed, and his head turned to the side, focusing all his energy on resisting her playful advances. Ishido playfully teased him, causing him to gasp as he struggled to suppress his reactions, which only encouraged her further. She found his flustered expression utterly captivating. However, Midoriya was determined not to be a passive participant this time. If necessary, he would use his strength to escape her hold, and he did just that, grabbing Ishido by her wrist. He urged her to relax, insisting that they shouldn't be doing this. Ishido, undeterred, encouraged him not to be so stubborn. Midoriya used his free hand to push her back slightly, but she held onto his wrist as well, trying to draw closer while he attempted to keep her at bay. The more he resisted, the more determined Ishido became, though it was evident that she was struggling to get near him again. She desperately tried to free her arms so she could lean against him once more, but Midoriya held it firmly, his face still flushed from being so close to her, which made him shyly close his eyes. Suddenly, Ishido let go of his wrist, and in a moment of surprise, his hand inadvertently swung out, striking her face with a loud slap. Shock replaced his embarrassment as he stared at her, speechless. A girl stood in front of him, a light lavender mark on her right cheek. Ishido appeared shocked, her attempts to grab him and her movements coming to a halt. He released her arm as if it were burning. Ishido remained still for a moment, then gently touched her sore cheek. Midoriya noticed a purple blush creeping onto her face. She slowly brought her other hand towards him, her movements tentative. Her gaze seemed unfocused, as if she were shy. Midoriya felt a mix of confusion and concern. Ishido had a strange request, one that left him bewildered. She leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper, urging him to act in a way he never expected. He hesitated, struggling to comprehend her words. She pressed on, her determination evident as she confronted him directly. The tension in the air was palpable, and he could feel his heart racing. With a sudden burst of instinct, he reacted, but the situation was unlike anything he had ever encountered. Ishido's response was immediate, her expression shifting as a smile broke through her initial shock. As the moments unfolded, Midoriya found himself caught in a whirlwind of emotions, unsure of how to navigate this unexpected turn in their relationship. Ishido's playful demeanor and the lightness of the moment began to shift the atmosphere, leaving him both intrigued and uncertain. He couldn't quite understand why he felt compelled to continue, but there was a spark of joy in her eyes that made him want to explore this new dynamic between them. Midoriya felt a strange mix of emotions as he made contact with her skin, noting the sound it produced. Ishido's reactions were a blend of surprise and discomfort, and he couldn't help but be curious. Leaning in slightly, he noticed a faint mark forming on her skin. Suddenly, he realized the situation he was in and thought about escaping, even in his current state. However, Ishido held him back, causing them both to lose balance and fall to the floor. They ended up in an awkward position, with Midoriya above Ishido, his hands resting beside her head. Ishido teased him about his straightforwardness, and he stammered that it hadn't been intentional. She playfully acknowledged his innocence, which left him puzzled. When she mentioned that others had noticed his purity, he froze, unable to hide his surprise. After a moment of hesitation, he nodded in response to her questions about who else had been involved. Ishido's excitement grew as she learned about his connections with other girls, and she expressed her surprise at the number of people he had interacted with. Midoriya felt a wave of frustration wash over him as he realized he hadn't yet shared this information with 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐼, wanting to sort things out first. He sighed, feeling overwhelmed by the complexity of the situation. "I just wanted to talk and say I'm sorry, not have a taste of everyone's private parts." It was a surprising turn of events, and the atmosphere shifted. There was a playful challenge in the air, and the energy was electric. Ishido-san, with a mischievous grin, insisted that Midoriya should join in on the fun, urging him to embrace the moment. In a sudden move, she flipped him over, now sitting confidently on his lap, her expression filled with excitement. Midoriya let out some grunts as he tried to resist her. She increased her speed, pushing him to his limits. He focused on maintaining control over his mind and body, but Ishido proved to be a formidable opponent. She pulled back momentarily and urged him to strike her again. In a daze, he complied, delivering a light slap to her cheek that left a tingling sensation, only fueling her determination. Ishido had heard about such dynamics before and initially found them perplexing. How could someone enjoy a bit of roughness? Yet, in her dreams, Midoriya engaged in various daring acts, leaving her waking up in a flurry of emotions, feeling exhilarated and overwhelmed. She lost many pajamas in this way, needing to release all that tension. Midoriya felt guilty for what he was doing behind his girlfriend's back, but he couldn't stop. Ishido's enthusiastic demeanor and the way she looked at him captivated his attention, making him forget everything else. He was enjoying it far too much, and with each encounter he felt less concern, though guilt still lingered. Ishido was overwhelmed by the sensations, feeling exhilarated and excited. She had never anticipated that Midoriya could evoke such feelings in her. If she had known earlier, she might have pursued him from the start. But now, with him in a relationship, she needed to seize the moment. As she felt something building inside her, she sensed that he was nearing his limit too. When he reached a peak, his hands instinctively held her in place, and she felt a rush of excitement. The experience was intense, and though it left her breathless, it only heightened her longing. After catching her breath, she found herself sitting on Midoriya's lap, her hands resting on his chest, feeling the rhythm of his breathing and the heat radiating from his flushed face. Midoriya slowly opened his eyes, meeting her gaze, and she could see a lingering intensity in his expression. She wasn't finished yet. With a playful smile, she began to move on his lap, letting out soft sounds of pleasure as she pressed against him. Suddenly, Midoriya sat up, surprising her as he lifted her with ease and laid her on one of the benches. She hadn't expected such a bold move, but it thrilled her. Midoriya hovered above her, his intense gaze locked onto hers as she eagerly awaited his next action. She gasped when she felt his hand touch her, sending a wave of heat through her. His attention shifted to her neck, and she was caught off guard by the sensations. He continued to explore, and she felt herself becoming more and more excited. She tried to move her legs together, but he was in the way. Noticing her movements, he adjusted his focus, eliciting more gasps and soft sounds from her. Her hands found their way to his back, pulling him closer as she reveled in the sensations. She felt herself getting lost in the moment, her body responding to his every touch. As he continued, she felt overwhelmed by pleasure, her breath quickening. She could feel herself nearing a peak, and as she wrapped her legs around him, she let out a cry of exhilaration. The moment was intense, and she felt as if she might burst with excitement. When she finally reached that peak, she felt a wave of bliss wash over her. As Midoriya pulled away, he felt conflicted. He didn't want to reach this point, but he knew he had to make a choice. He glanced at Ishido, who looked utterly blissful, her expression one of pure joy. For a moment, he worried that he might have overwhelmed her. She stirred, he released a sigh of relief. Trying to keep his focus, he helped her sit up, still feeling the effects of their encounter. Her eyes regained focus, and she wrapped her arms around his waist, making it clear she wasn't ready to let go. He tried to gently push her away, but she held on tightly, playfully refusing to let him go. He knew he had to return to the dorms, but her playful demeanor made it difficult to break free. "You also have to go back," she insisted. "But then we won't get to do it again," he replied, a hint of reluctance in his voice. "That's the main idea. Did you forget that I still have a girlfriend?" "No," she pouted, crossing her arms and puffing her cheeks slightly. "It's not fair. 𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐿 has you all to herself. That's one of the things about being in a relationship." "𝐻𝐵F," she said, her tone playful. "She just had a lot of luck that you got your eyes on her since the entrance exams. I bet I could get you to like me if I had tried. So are you planning to steal me from her?" "What? Of course not. I'm not that kind of girl. Besides, 𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐿 is one of my very best friends. I would never try to steal her man. Not that I would make it anyways. I mean, just look at you now, Muscles. Tell me you didn't think about her at least once when you were with me back then." "What? You two are made for each other, I have to admit. I guess I was just jealous that 𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐿 found someone before me, and you of all people. But I always shipped you two together, so I don't know what to say. Would I love you, Mina, be too much to ask for?" "Yes, it would." She let out a light laugh and playfully punched him on the abs, getting up and resting her hands on her waist. I know, but..." She turned around and planted a quick peck on his lips, making him step back slightly. It doesn't stop me from saying that I love you, Midoriya. He blushed at her words, prompting a small giggle from her. You must have heard that a lot, but I'm going to say it anyway. You are so cute anyway, we should at least take a shower. I'm sure there are some spare training clothes around here. Did I just hear taking a shower? I go that way, and you go to the girls' locker room. Midoriya pointed to the showers where he would take another bath and gently pushed her towards the door. Mina playfully resisted, begging him to let her stay, even stopping him by putting her foot on the wall. No, stop. Someone could see me. It's just 2 meters to the other door. I trust you can do it. Please, Muscles. What if they see me leaving the boys' locker room? This time, Midoriya stopped pushing her and considered it for a moment. After that, he turned her around and rested his hands on her shoulders, looking into her eyes. Okay, but we have to make it quick, or else the rest of the class will get suspicious. Oh my, how long have we been here? He trailed off, but Mina quickly brought him back by making circles with her index finger on his chest. Hey, Muscles, we have to hurry. Unless you want to repeat our little session. Shaking his head, Midoriya headed to the showers with Mina right behind him. Though he stood at least 7 showers away from her, Mina came closer, using the one right next to his. When he looked away, she gave him a playful slap on the back, earning a surprised squeak from him. When he turned around to say something, she just hopped into the same shower, standing just inches away from him as the water washed away the soap from their bodies. You are very straightforward. What can I say? I'm just like that. After their shared shower and getting some spare training clothes, the two of them moved back to the dorms, sneaking all the way to their rooms without being seen by the other students. Midoriya didn't want to explain to everyone why he was wearing the hero training clothes, nor why Ishido was also wearing them or the reason for them being together. After changing into his normal clothes, Midoriya let his body fall onto his bed. Forget the plans. If he had to repeat the same thing with Yaoyorozu, so be it. The sooner he solved this problem between Uraraka and the girls, the sooner he would be able to focus on the next one. A bunch of girls wanting a piece of him. She wouldn't do it, right? Yaoyorozu wouldn't be after me. I didn't expect any of them to act the way they did, but not her, being raised in a high-class environment and all. Not to mention she threatened to throw me into the nearest river. Extreme, yes, but understandable, given the shock from the situation she found us in. Still, he had a bad feeling that he was going to get more surprises, which made him seriously consider acting first and talking later. Oh boy, when did it become a course of action for me? How will I explain that to Uraraka? I'm already seeing it. Oh hey, I know we are dating and all, but I just got wild with the girls from our class. Yes, all of them, hope you don't mind. And I was worried because of my research. She's going to freak out. What if she turns into a 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐴? I'd rather face Kaken in a bad mood without my quirk. Come on, relax, Midoriya. She's not a monster. All you have to do is keep calm and talk things out, like a sane and normal person. In the end, it could even strengthen their relationship. He had been severely tempted, but he kept loyal to her. Sort of. Luckily, no one dared to go further than. Well, he didn't want to think about it. Midoriya sat on one of the couches in the common room, his hands together in front of his face and his head lowered as he kept deep in thought, oblivious to the movement around him, namely a floating yellow shirt and blue shorts that seemed to skip toward him, leaning forward once they stopped behind the couch. His mumbling was interrupted when he felt something cover his eyes, but he could still see things normally. Guess who it is? Hagekure-san. How did you know? I thought you were distracted mumbling. Your voice. As she let go of him, Midoriya felt something land on his side, probably the girl jumping over the couch and sitting beside him. He then felt her arms wrap around his neck and the weight of her head resting on his shoulder. Though he got a reddish hue on his face, he didn't overreact to the intimacy Hagekure was showing him. Maybe he was gaining some resistance. Midoriya, I never asked before, but can I call you by your first name? You don't mind, right? Since he felt inadequate, he was surprised when she held him closer, and he could almost see the smile on her face. She asked if he was free that night, and he hesitated, unsure of how to respond. She then suggested they could have some fun together, her tone casual as if it were the most normal thing to ask. He felt flustered and tried to deflect, reminding her that they shouldn't be discussing such things. She teased him, playfully challenging him about his feelings for another girl, which made him uneasy. Just then, 𝐼𝐼𝐬 entered the room, her vibrant energy filling the space as she spotted Midoriya. She approached him with a playful demeanor, making him even more nervous. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 mentioned her shopping trip and hinted at wanting to spend time with him, completely unaware of the tension between him and the other girl. 𝗟𝗏 interjected, claiming her priority over Midoriya, which led to a light-hearted but chaotic exchange between the three of them. They all noticed how flustered he was, and the girls playfully debated their intentions in front of him. Midoriya felt overwhelmed, trying to assert his feelings while the girls continued their banter. Mina dramatically lamented the situation, expressing her frustration at being unable to pursue him due to his girlfriend. The conversation took a humorous turn as they discussed the possibility of sharing him, which made Midoriya's heart race even more. The playful teasing continued, and the girls plotted to invite more friends into their little adventure. As they discussed their plans, 𝗟𝗏 arrived, having just finished swimming. She quickly joined the fray, and the group of girls playfully tackled Midoriya, lifting him off the ground as he squirmed and laughed. They carried him toward 𝐾𝐿𝐬's room, the atmosphere filled with laughter and excitement as they teased him relentlessly, making it clear that they were all in on the fun. Between tears and laughter, Midoriya spotted the door to 𝐾𝐿𝐬's room, his eyes widening with desperation. He called out to the girls, urging them to pause, expressing his concern about their actions. They dismissed his worries, insisting they could handle the situation. One of the girls mentioned that Midoriya had been at the gym and had hurt his muscles while lifting weights. Another confirmed that they had come to help him after Mina had called for assistance. Uraraka, confused, approached the group and asked why they were carrying Midoriya in such a manner. They explained that they thought he needed help and were on their way to find Momo. As they realized Uraraka was there, they quickly released Midoriya, causing him to fall onto his back. Uraraka, ignoring the forced smiles of the girls, focused on Midoriya, concerned for his well-being. She offered to take him to the infirmary, but he insisted that he was fine and just needed some rest. Uraraka used her gravity quirk to lift him effortlessly, carrying him to his room. Meanwhile, 4 girls watched from around the corner, feeling a mix of relief and regret for the missed opportunity. Unbeknownst to them, Yaoyorozu had overheard everything and began to piece together the situation, realizing that Midoriya had been keeping secrets. Later, Midoriya walked through the corridors of 𝐼𝐼𝐬, eager to get to the dorms after class. However, he had duties to clean the classroom and was paired with 𝗟𝗏, who playfully teased him. He also encountered 𝗟𝗏 and Mina, narrowly escaping their attention using his full cowl. The memory of lunchtime replayed in his mind as he recalled Yaoyorozu's request to meet after class. Yaoyorozu had asked to discuss a new study method, but Midoriya sensed there was more to it. He had been trying to avoid drawing attention, but after the events with the girls, he felt it was time to confront the situation. Standing in front of her door, he took a deep breath before knocking. When Yaoyorozu opened the door, she greeted him with a neutral expression and invited him inside. Once seated, she explained that she wanted his opinion on a new system to help their class excel in studies. Midoriya listened attentively, but he soon realized that she had a different agenda. Yaoyorozu's tone shifted as she addressed the relationship he had with Uraraka, expressing her concern about their actions and the potential consequences. She warned him that their behavior could lead to serious repercussions, including expulsion. Midoriya was taken aback by her seriousness but decided to remain calm and composed. Yaoyorozu continued, emphasizing the importance of maintaining a good public image and the need for them to be more cautious moving forward. I know it's messed up, but he wasn't finished yet. Once again, she interrupted him with that authoritative tone of hers, which was starting to get on his nerves. He reminded her that it wasn't just a one-time incident. Sometime later, he and the other girls had seen them together right in front of them. She had knocked them out and tied them up, which was extreme, but she had her reasons. Still, she pressed on, accusing him of assaulting 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐃𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 and 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝑎𝑔𝐵𝐻. He tried to defend himself, insisting it was an accident, but she cut him off, asserting her role in this conversation. She demanded to know if he had been involved in any illicit acts with other girls. He hesitated, feeling the weight of her gaze. Finally, he admitted that he had, and the guilt washed over him as he awaited her reaction. She leaned closer, desperation etched on her face as she gripped his shirt tightly, shaking him slightly while expressing her anger and confusion. She couldn't understand why he had acted that way, questioning his sanity and whether he wanted to be expelled or simply couldn't control himself. He urged her to calm down, explaining that he regretted his actions more than anyone else. It wasn't entirely his fault, he had only wanted to sort things out, but suddenly everyone seemed interested in him, curious about what it was like to be with 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐼. She struggled to accept that, caught between disbelief and the urge to cry. He reassured her that he didn't plan to continue those actions. However, she insisted that he couldn't keep going like that with 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐼 either. When he asked why, she hesitated, clearly conflicted. Was it because she was the vice class representative? Or because they were still in high school? Deep down, she knew he hadn't hurt 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐼, it was the opposite. Yet, she still felt the need to intervene. As she muttered to herself, he pointed it out, surprising her. She blushed, trying to explain that she was just thinking out loud. He assured her it was okay, and despite her earlier outburst, he maintained his warm smile, which always seemed to lift her spirits. She admired him for his unwavering determination to be a hero, always pushing beyond his limits while wearing that smile. It made her realize how impressive he was, and she felt a mix of pride and admiration for him. She had always aimed to be a model student and hero, but here was Midoriya, standing before her, embodying everything she aspired to be. In that moment, she recognized her own childishness in trying to play the mature one. The most mature thing to do was to face the truth. She apologized to him, admitting she hadn't been honest. He was confused, thinking he should be the one apologizing, but she clarified that she didn't want to see him with another girl. As the pieces began to connect in his mind, he realized the depth of her feelings. He had seen this before and felt a sense of dread wash over him. The situation was becoming all too familiar, and he couldn't shake the feeling of envy that crept in as he thought about the other girls in their class, including 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐼. Yaoyorozu was opening up to him, but he felt the need to set boundaries. He gently suggested they leave things as they were for the day. However, she held him in place by his shoulders, causing him to tense up at her touch. She began to express her feelings, but he interrupted her, pleading for her not to say what he feared was coming. He knew that if she uttered those words, it would lead to complications he wasn't ready to face. He had been through this before, and it never ended well. Yaoyorozu's expression shifted from confusion to determination. She seemed to challenge him with her next words, hinting at the pattern he had experienced with others. He braced himself for her confession, knowing it would lead to a familiar spiral of emotions. He felt a mix of apprehension and resignation, aware that every time a girl had declared her feelings, it had led to chaos. She pressed him further, suggesting that perhaps her feelings were genuine, but he remained skeptical. The tension between them grew as she leaned closer, her intentions becoming clearer. Yaoyorozu's demeanor shifted as she expressed her desires, reminding him that she was a woman with her own needs. The atmosphere thickened with unspoken tension, and he felt a rush of uncertainty. She moved closer, her long hair cascading around them, and he felt a mix of vulnerability and apprehension. Her gaze was intense, and he could sense the shift in her demeanor as she began to assert herself. In a bold move, she cupped his chin, drawing him into a moment that left him breathless. He felt the weight of her attention, and for a moment he was lost in the intensity of the moment. She began to teach him lessons about focus and respect, her actions becoming more assertive. He tried to resist, but her confidence was overwhelming, and he found himself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. As she continued, he felt a mixture of confusion and intrigue, struggling to navigate the unexpected turn of events. Her playful teasing and assertiveness left him both captivated and bewildered. She emphasized the importance of listening and paying attention, her words laced with a challenge that left him on edge. He felt the heat of the moment, unsure of how to respond to her boldness. The dynamic between them shifted, and he realized that he was at her mercy, caught in a game he never intended to play. The tension hung in the air, leaving him both anxious and curious about what would come next. He averted his gaze, but Yaoyorozu gently held his head with her hands and made him look at her. She asked him about the first lesson, and he stammered that it was to stay focused on the girl he was with. She praised him for being a good boy and proposed a game. If he answered correctly, he would receive a special reward, but if he answered wrong, there would be consequences. The thought of punishment made him anxious, and he realized he wanted to answer correctly. Yaoyorozu then instructed him to describe the vision he was getting, urging him not to hold back. He hesitated, complimenting her appearance, and she encouraged him to elaborate. As he struggled to find the right words, she playfully challenged him, making it clear that she expected him to engage fully. The pressure was intense, and he felt completely at her mercy. In a surprising turn, she invited him to explore further, and he found himself caught off guard by her boldness. Despite his initial reluctance, he felt compelled to comply. As he reached for her, he was overwhelmed by the sensations and the warmth of the moment. His mind raced with conflicting thoughts, but he was drawn deeper into the experience. Yaoyorozu guided his hands, and he felt a mix of excitement and panic. She teased him about his previous experiences, and he admitted to having touched others before. The atmosphere was charged, and he found himself lost in the moment, captivated by her presence. When she playfully asked him to remove her skirt, he hesitated, but her insistence pushed him to comply. He took his time, trying to be gentle, and she encouraged him with her approving gaze. As he slid her skirt down, he noticed the contrast of her stockings against her skin, and he couldn't help but admire her. With her permission, he explored further, feeling her thighs and earning soft reactions from her. The more he followed her lead, the more he noticed her eagerness, and he found himself getting caught up in the playful game. She asked him to caress her, and he complied, feeling a mix of thrill and uncertainty. As the playful atmosphere continued, she made more daring requests, and he felt the tension build. He hesitated at times, but her encouragement pushed him to keep going. The experience was both exhilarating and confusing, leaving him questioning his own feelings as he navigated the unexpected dynamics between them. Midoriya focused intently, knowing he needed to escape the situation. Drawing on his experience, he reached for her tights, moving his thumbs in gentle circles, which elicited soft sounds of surprise from the girl above him. She closed her eyes, biting her thumb as if trying to resist the playful teasing. Eventually, she rested her hands on the mattress, slightly lifting herself away from him. Momo leaned on her elbows, encouraging Midoriya to come closer. She felt a rush of excitement as he reached out to her. The warmth of the moment made her heart race, and she was surprised by the intensity of her feelings. It was hard for her to concentrate, especially when he brushed his fingers against her, sending shivers through her body. Momo found herself overwhelmed by the connection they shared, and she couldn't help but express her longing for him to continue. She quickly shifted her position, eager to be closer to him. She ran her hands through his green hair, gently caressing his head. Momo expressed her admiration for Midoriya, emphasizing how wonderful he was and hinting at the joy he would bring her. Midoriya, determined to please her, promised to do his best. As he focused on her, Momo's eyes widened, and she held on to him tightly, causing him to wince slightly at the tug on his hair. The sensations escalated, and Momo's reactions intensified, her breaths becoming more pronounced as she moved rhythmically above him. Midoriya, encouraged by her enthusiasm, continued to engage with her, wondering about her limits as she showed no signs of fatigue. Momo urged him to keep going, her voice filled with excitement and urgency. She called out to him, seeking his attention as she ran her hands through his hair, her expression revealing her overwhelming feelings. Momo praised him, expressing her longing for him to learn and grow with her, emphasizing that he should focus solely on her. She made it clear that she wanted him to be with her, reinforcing her feelings and connection. Midoriya was taken aback by her fervent declarations, trying to process the intensity of the moment as Momo reached a peak of emotion, arching her back and holding onto his hair tightly. Midoriya found himself in a situation where he could see Momo's eyes fluttering, and he felt her tremble slightly. For the first time, he struggled to focus, as Momo seemed to overwhelm him with her energy, making it a bit difficult for him to breathe. After a moment of stillness, Momo looked down at him and gently caressed his cheeks, still catching her breath. She expressed how incredible he was and playfully called him her good boy. Midoriya was taken aback, unsure of how to respond. Momo continued, saying that since he had been so good, it was time for a reward. He felt a rush of nervousness as she positioned herself closer to him. Despite his hesitation, Momo reassured him that she was happy to hear he wanted to learn from her. Midoriya tried to clarify his intentions, but Momo seemed determined to guide him, expressing her longing to ensure he received the best treatment. As she leaned in closer, Midoriya's heart raced, caught between excitement and uncertainty about what was to come. "Only need me, right?" Before he could protest further, Momo leaned in closer, her playful demeanor evident as she focused on him. She wanted to ensure he was enjoying their time together. She noticed how he was holding back, and in her mind she encouraged him to let go of his reservations. He didn't need to worry about anyone else. He was hers, and she wanted him to embrace that fully. Momo was putting on an impressive display, captivating both his eyes and body. Despite Midoriya's efforts to remain composed, he couldn't suppress the sounds that escaped him. She had a remarkable ability to break down his defenses, drawing out feelings that were reminiscent of his interactions with 𝗟𝗟𝐼𝐜. He hesitated to admit it, but Momo was exceptionally skilled at this. Her gaze was intense, filled with a mix of emotions that was both alluring and peculiar. It reminded him of the look his mother had whenever he was heading off to school or moving into the dorms at 𝗟𝗟. In that moment, Midoriya realized that perhaps Momo was not entirely herself, revealing a new and unexpected side that he had not seen before. Could it be that after all those years of working hard to be the model student, she had developed a new trait of her personality? Midoriya tried his best to ignore Momo, who seemed to be drawing all his energy. He was reaching his limit, and she showed no signs of stopping. In fact, she seemed to quicken her pace, making it impossible for him to hold on any longer. As energy gathered around him, sparks began to fly. Every time he reached his limit, something within him activated, and he found himself overwhelmed. Momo, focused on him, seemed to savor the moment, her eyes locked onto his flushed face. She remarked on how good he tasted, and he felt a mix of embarrassment and surprise at her boldness. When she asked if he enjoyed it, he hesitated but eventually admitted it was amazing. Momo pressed him for comparisons, and he stumbled over his words, trying to explain that each girl was different in her own way. Just then, a familiar voice interrupted them. 𝗟𝗟𝐼𝐜 stood in the doorway, arms crossed and an eyebrow raised, a playful expression on her face. She teased them, suggesting that Midoriya could keep going for a long time. Behind her, several heads peeked in, eyes wide with mixed emotions at the sight before them. Midoriya fell silent, while Momo stuttered, trying to explain that this was not what it looked like. 𝗟𝗟𝐼𝐜 reassured her, suggesting she should have locked the door. Momo felt a wave of embarrassment wash over her, and as she stood up to cover herself with a blanket, tears threatened to spill from her eyes. 𝗟𝗟𝐼𝐜 embraced her warmly, comforting her and acknowledging how hard it was to resist Midoriya's charm. Momo felt ashamed, but 𝗟𝗟𝐼𝐜 reminded her that it was okay and that they wouldn't judge her. The other girls chimed in, sharing their own experiences and feelings, creating a sense of camaraderie among them. Momo confessed that she had wanted Midoriya's attention solely on her, wishing he would look at her the way he looked at 𝗟𝗟𝐼𝐜. The group shared a moment of understanding, realizing they all cared for him in their own special ways. 𝗟𝗟𝐼𝐜 took a deep breath, contemplating her next words. She proposed that they could all have a place in Midoriya's life, surprising everyone with the idea of sharing him. The room filled with a mix of confusion and hope as Momo's eyes lit up at the suggestion, eager to explore what this could mean for all of them. Did she really mean it? Ochako expressed that she wouldn't want to see her friends sad. Since everyone had shared moments with Midoriya, she preferred to have them on her side rather than face competition. Mina, excited by the idea, praised Ochako for her brilliant suggestion. Toru was surprised by Mina's enthusiasm but realized that spending time with Midoriya was better than missing out. Tsu and Kyoka, initially taken aback, eventually agreed, acknowledging that it made sense. Hagakure felt a comforting hand on her shoulder from 𝗟𝗟𝐼𝐜, who reassured her that it was okay to feel uncertain. She reminded Toru that there was plenty of Midoriya for everyone. Searching for Momo, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 found her deep in thought, mumbling to herself. Suddenly, Momo declared her agreement, admitting that she liked Midoriya and anticipated feeling the same way in the future. Mina, eager to act, was halted by Uraraka, who pointed out that they still needed Midoriya's consent. Toru excitedly declared her feelings for Midoriya, surprising the group. However, Uraraka clarified that they needed to consult Midoriya first. The group debated how to approach him, with Momo humorously suggesting a blunt approach. They all recognized that Midoriya was different from most boys, making the situation more complicated. Uraraka waved a hand in front of Midoriya's face, trying to bring him back to reality after he seemed stunned. When he finally focused on her, he felt overwhelmed by her caring expression. His mind raced as he tried to piece together the events that led him to this moment. He feared that Ochako was about to end things between them. But instead, she surprised him by saying that all the girls had decided to share him, revealing that he had gained a 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬. The nervous smile on her face left him confused. Was she joking or was this real? It felt too surreal to be a dream, especially with all the girls from his class present. Midoriya realized that Ochako had just declared something monumental, leaving him in a state of disbelief.